Welcome back to the Carp Angler Chronicles podcast. A really, in my eyes, exciting episode for you guys today. We have Dean Towey from Scientific Baits on the podcast. Dean is someone that I first came across, I thought it was about 10 years ago. Dean says it's probably getting on for 15. He's probably right. On a forum about bait. He was someone that contributed a lot back then. I know myself and Pete kind of got quite heavily involved with the bait chats, and we learned a hell of a lot from Dean. So he is an absolute goldmine of bait information. So with that being said, this podcast will be 100%, well, pretty close to 100% bait related. We'll be going into the deep weeds with it all. So if that's not your kind of thing, probably give this podcast a miss. But if you do want to get a greater understanding of what attracts carp efficiently, maybe how to put some edges on your own baits or even create a bait, this podcast is most definitely for you. So, Dean, welcome along to the podcast.
Yeah, hi guys.
Pete, how you doing, man? Pete's here as well.
I'm good, thank you, Sam. I'm all good. How you doing, Dean?
Yeah, not bad, Pete. Get your name right this time.
Yeah, Dave.
Just one thing though, Sam.
Go on, mate.
I'll add to the introduction there. It's not just about people adding edges to the bait and all the rest of it and helping people to create a bait. It's actually choosing what you're going to use, really, because a lot of people don't choose bait for the right reasons.
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely. Yeah, I love that. Jumped in and corrected me straight away. I love that, mate. You're absolutely right. People will tend to have like their favorite carp angler or whatever, and he uses sticky or whatever it might be, so they jump on it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
that's it. Yeah.
Cool. Look, there's no easy way to enter. We just gotta, forget about the lube and jump in. I think what we'll do is, we'll start off because I have a feeling this podcast will go off on many tangents. We will start off, if it's right with you, Dean, by going through our listeners' questions. So I popped a post up on Instagram earlier. If you're listening and you're not on our Instagram page, make sure you go and follow that, because we do put quite a bit on there. So I put a post up, said that we got Dean coming on. So we have a few questions from there. So I think what we'll do is we'll blast through those, Dean, if that's cool. Doesn't have to be super in-depth answers, but feel free to riff ahead if you choose to. So first up, we've got Will Paul Hill. Good old Will. Spoke to him quite a bit. He's asked, what are the top 5 ingredients you would add to a food bait?
Interesting. Well, I mean, what's a food bait? That's the first thing you can actually... you can talk about a food bait in a way that you're going to try and create a nutritional value bait, a HMV style bait, or you could just create something that's got good food value. It's very digestible. It's very attractive. I mean, because, a bird food bait's a good food bait, but it might not necessarily be a HMV bait. But yeah, I mean, for the run of the mill food baits nowadays that people are mainly talking about, you're talking about your fish meals, ideally a low temperature one. Not a necessity. I mean, you can still catch carp on good old Previmi, what's been getting used for, well, a long time. The first fish meal I used, and you can still get it now. So yeah, fish meal. And then you'll probably need an additional fat source in there. So if you're not going to put any oil in there in the mix, probably something like soya flour, just to supplement the fish meal. And then it all depends on your budget, really. You can include refined milk proteins in there. Yeah, I mean, it's quite a broad question, but
it is.
Yeah, your fish meals, milk proteins, bird foods, but you can go down that many different routes to create a food bait. I mean, I sell baits. It's not a plug, but I sell baits that are fish meal based, bird food based, milk protein based, and even peanut based and tiger nut based, and they're all food baits. They're all on paper sufficient to sustain carp and even help them all to grow. So yeah, I mean, the world's your oyster, really. But yeah, fish meal is a very good ingredient. It's super attractive, fish meal. You can virtually put fish meal into any formula and it'll make it better because it's such a good ingredient. And I don't necessarily think it's so good because of its nutritional value. I think it's more its attraction. You know, fish meal is super attractive. Yeah, I mean,
do you think that's down to its amino acid profile?
Yeah, partly, yeah, because, you know, amino acids are a key player in the attraction stakes. But also it's full of nucleotides. Nucleotides are a massive player in attracting carp to food sources. And fish meal's very rich in nucleotides. So yeah, it's the amino acids and the nucleotides.
Cool, 100%. Good stuff. Next one is from Tivy. What do you think of the new flavors and additives that are available today compared to the older stuff that's no longer available?
Well, I mean, if you're talking about liquid flavors, you've got some of the classic old flavors that you can't get anymore. They're not produced, but there's equally as good liquid flavors, attractors, if you want to call them that, getting produced by lots of people. I mean, I used Bob at Campbell's for quite a number of years, but he's gone now. God rest his soul. But I'm using somebody else, and I'm equally happy with those. But I mean, it's the same again. I generally, very rarely, choose an attractor without knowing a little bit about its makeup, because some attractors are far better than others. But yeah, there's lots of very good liquid flavors around. But one of my personal favorites is essential oils, you know, and essential oils are the same now as they were 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And they're superb attractors. They're very complex, but they're very good attractors. They're entirely natural. I mean, there's been a huge debate going on the internet for, I don't know, a few years. It got a little bit boring because, you know, you've got certain quarters that say carp can't detect essential oils because they're an oil. Well, that's a massive error, because an essential oil is only an oil by name. It's not an oil by nature. It's not the same as salmon oil or soya oil or any other oil, hemp oil. It's just called an essential oil, but it's massively complex. There's things in there that get ionized in the water. You've got the phenols in there, the carboxylic acids, the esters, and all these things react with the water, and they all serve to attract carp. You know, they're just investigation triggers. So yeah, I mean, essential oils and flavors, they're just as good now as they always have been. And then the range of additives that you can get now, it's enormous, really. You know, yeah, but I mean, there are lots of them, lots of the additives. It's the same again. When you actually know the components in the additives that are doing the job, you don't necessarily have to use that additive, because you can find these things in other places. Greenlet mussels are a perfect example. You know, probably the first additive that I ever used in a fish meal bait. You know, a low-level additive. But once I knew the components of the greenlet mussel that were attracting the carp, which is namely the betaine and the DMPT. I mean, I could talk about that for a while, but you don't necessarily need. I mean, greenlet mussel is a very good additive, but it's very expensive. And I'm pretty confident that I can get the same reaction from fish without adding greenlet mussel into a bait, just adding different other things like betaine and various other ingredients. So yeah, I mean, yeah, the range of additives now, it's massive. You know, it's enormous, but there's still things that are yet to be discovered, because not everything's always used in bait. You know, you've got massive markets for animal feeds and all the rest of it. I mean, I've used. I got sent a sample once from a friend in France of a pig palatant, and that was a superb additive, but I only got a very small amount of it, and I haven't been in contact with him again, but I wouldn't mind getting hold of maybe a few litres of that. But it certainly worked, you know, it certainly worked.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I'm literally trying to find a palatant that excites me at the minute. As well as that, essential oils is something everyone that listens to this podcast will know is something that I'm really into. So I definitely want to talk about essential oils later. We'll have to loop back around to that just to get these questions done and dusted. The next one is kind of leading on from the last. I don't think you're going to be able to answer, but I'll ask anyway. If you could only use one flavor in your angling, what would it be?
Wow. One flavour. Oh, well, I'll answer it with an actual flavour then.
Go on.
Possibly the best flavour that I've ever used. I'll talk about liquid flavour, non-essential oil.
Give us both.
I used to use a long time ago. I used to use the original Richworth strawberry flavour, and it was purely just based upon the fact that I like the smell of it. I mean, this is years ago. Probably first started using this in about 1992, and it was just an extremely successful flavour for me. Every bait that I put it into, I caught fish. I've used it in pop-ups on its own, in combinations, all the rest of it. And then I found out that Bob was the creator of that, Bob at Campbell's, because he did all the original Richworth flavours. And I used to use that flavour until I couldn't get it. So yeah, that's one of my personal favourites, and it's it's very rare in so much as I still use it, and it's not based on science whatsoever. It's just based on the fact that it's always been a good flavour. It smells nice, and the Carp seem to like it. So yeah, but Scopex is another good one. Scopex is very good. The original Secret Agents was extremely good flavour. You only had to use a couple of mil, so it was extremely strong. And essential oils, I've got two all-time favourites, and that's cinnamon and orange oil. But not every orange oil is the same. There's massive differences in the orange oils that you get from different people. But yeah, I mean, I could talk about that a bit more. But yeah, my two favourite essential oils is cinnamon and orange. Well, sweet orange is the one I use. So yeah.
Yeah, we will come back to that for sure, because I think Pete's currently using an orange oil, and I've used cinnamon in the winter for ages. Okay, cool. Got two more listener questions, and then we'll jump into some more kind of in-depth stuff. Finn Bruin. Oh, I can't see the full. Hang on. Finn Bruin's part: better for a quick bite, bright visual food bait or dull food bait. It can only show me a little bit of the message, but basically I think he's asking what's better for a quick bite, a bright hook bait or a dull food bait.
That's really not even drawing on my bait knowledge, is it? That's drawing on my fishing experience. But I think it's water dependent massively. Some waters you get extremely good results with bright hook baits. On other waters, match the hatch is far more effective. So, I mean, I sell boosted hardened bottom baits to match the baits, and the attractor levels are massively elevated in them, so they're boosted up, but they're exactly the same colour as the bottom baits, and they are extremely successful for lots of people that buy bait from me. So, one thing I will say though about the bright ones is, I think they're definitely more effective in clear water. I mean, they do work in turbid water, but Carp have got decent vision. That's another thing we could come on to. I did see somebody saying that they don't think Carp can see in colour, but that's not true. So yeah, I think visual hook baits are very effective on certain waters, and I think it's a bit of a pressure cycle with it. They get hammered on whites for so long, the whites are not too good. They get hammered on pinks, whatever. But yeah, I mean, same again, it's horses for courses, isn't it? You could never give anyone any advice if you're not fishing their water, because you can say, well, this is what's working for me, but you're not on their water, so you're not sure where that water's at. So
Yeah, exactly. I think as well, like just from my two penner for whatever it's worth, I think it depends what substrate you're fishing on as well. Because like a bright yellow one, which in the pot looks really bright, you could have that on some sandy gravel, and yeah, it's bright, but it's not as stand out as like a black bait, which generally we'd think, well, that's a dull bait, but actually with the contrast of the substrate, it's actually very, very stand out-ish. So I think that factors in.
No, that's a very good point. Yeah, that's definitely a very good point. Yeah.
Okay, the other, for some reason on the Facebook, I sound like an old man. On the Facebook, I can't view the full questions. The last one's from Ray, good old Ray, who's been messaging us for a while. He just wants to know about essential oils and which one, and then I can't read the rest of the message for some reason.
He was asking where you source them. I think he was asking you in particular, Sam, but it could be something for Dean if people want to source a good quality essential oil.
He asked no he sent me a message asking me where I source mine, and I think he's asking Dean. Hedging his bets between the two of us.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, probably for the last 8, 9 years, I don't think I've bought any essential oil of any bait company or ingredient supplier.
No.
I use a company that Alan Serenity, as we spoke about before, off the Carp Forum, put me onto a good number of years ago, but I never bothered buying any from them. And they're a company called Oils for Life. I think they're in Norwich, and I use them for all mine. Yeah.
Have you tested those against other essential oils directly onto fish, like tank fish or anything?
No, I haven't. No, but it's just they're very good quality. They've got a production date on, country of origin. They come in containers that protect them a lot more than normal. They're normally in a sort of a metal tube. But yeah, they're very good. I can't complain at all. But to tell a lie, I have started using another essential oil recently, and I can't get it from them. So I've started using somebody else, and I can't remember the name of them. So yeah, but Oils for Life, you can't go wrong. They're very reasonable on price. So yeah, if you're after any essential oils, get over to their website, and you'll get a good deal off them.
Mm. Yeah, nice. I'll check them out. I'm using an American brand at the minute. But yeah, I'll definitely check those out. Okay, cool. Right, on to our questions, really. I mean, there's so many different things that I think we should be talking about. It's just knowing where to start and trying to piece it together. I think what we will do is start on something that you touched upon before about amino acids. Obviously, a lot of people kind of get really hung up on the amino acids and making sure that they're all balanced up within the bait, of course, and then even going further and figuring out, which ones to leak off when and get a prolonged release of those amino acids. People basically just spend a hell of a lot of time on amino acids, kind of with the mind that they are the be all and end all. I think they're personally, I think they're extremely important. I don't think they're the be all and end all. What is your take on that? I think I already know because you've just kind of alluded to it. But as far as amino acids go, do you feel that people's time, these people that really go in depth on the aminos, do you think their time is warranted on that? Or do you think they're missing a trick by not focusing elsewhere?
Yes. I mean, we'll probably touch on this anyway later on because I've suggested we talk about the HMV theory because I've got quite a bit to say about that. But I used to massively focus on profiling the baits correctly when you could get the relevant information. And obviously, that's all related to the Carp's essential amino acid requirements in the bait, which is not necessarily the same as the amino acids that are going to attract a carp. But then again, that said, Carp do respond to virtually any amino acid. But there's lots of people like Pete Borton and the chap you're talking about, Missed M, whatever he calls himself on Carp Forum. Yeah, they're massively focusing on amino acids all the time, and it is a massive part of chemoreception and attraction of carp to food, but it doesn't need to be gone through with a fine-tooth comb, because if you've got anything in your bait that's protein-based, particularly if you've got anything that's pre-digested, that's your amino acid attraction sorted, and there's a whole array of liquids that you can get that are amino acid based, and there you go, you've got instant soluble amino acid attraction coming from your bait. So it's massively important. I mean, it's a proven fact that amino acids are a key trigger for carp, but there is also a hell of a lot of other things that will attract carp to your bait and get you a bite,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. With the other, I mean, we've mentioned this a few times, with the other things that attract carp, obviously you mentioned nucleotides. Do you want to just run everyone through the other things that you feel are attractors for carp?
Yeah, I mean, you've got things like sugars. Sugars are massively attractive to carp, more so at different times of the year. And then, as I say, we've spoken about flavors and essential oils. Now, they're not necessarily things that are going to make a carp feed. They're what's known as investigation triggers, but they do exactly the same thing because they draw the carp into the food source, and they will with a good attractor base combined with different things. It will initiate a reaction where they'll pick up your bait, and that's all you need. That's fishing. You're attracting something to your hook bait, and you want them to pick it up. And if your rig's efficient, then you're going to catch them. So yeah, you've got sugars, you've got amino acids, organic acids, massive, superb, supremely effective attractors. There's different types. You've got your classical ones like your butyric acid, and you've got all of your organic acids, even vinegar that what you put on your chips, that'll attract carp because it's an organic acid. Spices are attractive to fish. I mean, there's one particular spice that I use. I mean, don't know if I'm going to give the game away here, but anyway, when you actually look at the makeup of this particular spice, it's got what's known as a structural analog. So it's basically something that's the same shape as something else, and this one has got a molecule in it that's basically mimics an amino acid. So once I found this out, it was a massive light bulb moment that I realised, well, that's why that's doing the job. And this spice is supremely effective. You can put it in any bait and it will make the bait better. And you don't need massive amounts of it. And this particular molecule that's in this spice, it is water soluble. So, all the evidence is there. And then the evidence is there tenfold when you put it into your bait, and it just works. Well, don't know if you want me to give the game away and tell you which spice it is, but I might do.
Is it often in a base of maple flavour?
It certainly is.
Yeah, I'm with you. I know which one it is.
Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Pete, sorry, were you going to say something there, dude?
No. As I say, we've already given the game away. If people listen to previous pods, I guess they can link the two.
They can link the two. Yeah.
Yeah. They'll know. They'll know from that one.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
But I mean,
I've got a question for you on that actually. So I'm massively into essential oils, right? For my carp fishing, not for massages or anything. Keep that shit private.
Both.
But so I'm very much like, I am absolutely sold on this, and I'm always open to learning. I'm always open to being proved wrong, but I'm absolutely sold on the merits of having having essential oil, and then backing that up with its companion oleoresin. So if it's paprika, I'd have those both together, working from different angles within the bait. Is that something that you feel is am I on the right track with that, in your opinion? Do you feel that's got a lot of mileage? Do you disagree with it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you go back to the history of some real great baits, put it in simplistic terms, the attractor, which is the promise, you're attracting the fish to your bait with the attractor, which is the promise, is matched by a reward. So if you can get the attractor, say you're using cinnamon essential oil, so they're attracted by the cinnamon essential oil, and they'll get the taste of it. I mean, that's another massive issue we can chat about, but they'll get the taste of it in the water, and then if you've got that powdered spice in your bait, then the taste matches the promise. So yeah, I mean, that's the perfect design for an attraction package for your bait, but it's not a necessity, because I don't do it in every bait. Well, I do loosely, but yeah, I mean, the bait that I use cinnamon essential oil in, there's powdered cinnamon in the bait. Yeah, so yeah, it's the same thing as what you're saying. You're advocating massively.
Yeah. I've just noticed like a real difference, like a real significant difference. I wasn't that sold on it when I tried it, but I really, really find that makes big difference. Obviously, it's something that we've spoken about on the podcast a lot, or I have. So yeah, it's good to hear you back that up.
Yeah, you're definitely on the right track there. That's I think Rod Hutchinson used to speak about stuff like this as well. Sort of matching the attractors to the bait, the taste of the bait as well. So yeah.
Yeah, has he spoken about essential oils and oleoresins together?
Never heard him mention earlier resins because I don't think they were really in the ballpark when
No,
Rod's
no.
main bait books were published. I mean, I have read some of his more recent stuff,
Mm.
but yeah, I mean, yeah, he used to talk about essential oils as well. Yeah, so,
Mm.
but yeah, I mean, it's like the oleoresins. It's not something that I actually use, to be honest with you. Well, I do, um, but it's the one I use is on a flavor base, so it's slightly different.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you can do a similar sort of thing with the powdered spices. So yeah, it's a similar concept. So yeah, you just, as I say, you're sort of matching the attraction to the taste. Yeah, which is always
It's
a good
yeah,
route.
chemoreception and gustation as well, right?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, mate. So just to backtrack a bit, apologise, we're all over the place, but you were talking about an investigatory trigger, right? So you've got an investigatory trigger. Obviously, the carp, kind of seeks out what's that over there. Then next step, I would say, would be a feed trigger. Then taste,
Yeah.
palatability.
Yeah.
You agree with
I
those
mean,
three?
the thing. Yeah, 100%. I mean, the thing is, with a carp, because of its machinery, if you like, um, smell and taste and all the rest of it, it's all intermingled because
Yeah.
it's just a spatial thing. They can smell something if you like. I mean, it's not smell; it's olfaction, but they can detect that at lower thresholds, and then the taste system kicks in. It's a spatial thing. They can't taste things until they're of a certain distance away from them.
Yeah.
But you get your good taste enhancers. I mean, a well-known one, and it's no secret. But the levels can be critical. I think as monosodium glutamate.
Yeah.
Now you see people talking about this, and they're mainly just referring to it as a taste enhancer, but it's not really because it's soluble in water. So I really look upon that as a short range attractor. So once they're within a certain range of your bait, if you've got MSG in there, that is a short range attractor, which lots of things are. As I say, it's just a spatial. It's just a spatial thing. It's not. It's the machinery is reacting in a similar sort of way. Yeah, but I mean, there is obviously you've got a distinct pathway that you need to have an effective bait and attraction system. So yeah, you've got to draw them in from a range, and then you've got to make them pick the bait up. And obviously the taste as well is key, because if they don't like the taste, they'll spit it out, they'll reject it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that's massively important. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, where I was going with it, just to kind of put it in human terms, is first of all, you'd have an investigation trigger. I think that I'll just explain it all, and then you tell me if I've gone wrong. That would be the first thing that would be sparked within the carp, right? Then it's the trigger to feed. Then obviously it's the palatability, closely followed that, of course. And then I would say the fourth thing, if it is there, I have no idea, is it a feeling that they get from the bait? Do you believe in that?
Yeah, 100%. But I think there's one thing that I would actually reverse in what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
I think you really need you need the attraction, so you need the investigation trigger, and then you need the taste, and then I think after the taste, if the taste is palatable, then certain things become a feed trigger, and they make them feed harder after they've actually ingested it and chewed it up.
Wow. Okay. That's interesting. That's not what I would have said if someone had asked me. And that's very interesting. Are you able to expand on that, or?
Yeah, I mean, well, if you're using a boilie, I mean, boilies are not the only bait. We'll just talk about boilies. If you've attracted the fish in, and then it gets to the short range, as I say, you can get these short range taste enhancers that'll make the fish pick the bait up. So the fish picks the bait up, and if it starts to chew it, if it likes the taste, it doesn't reject it, then it can start releasing other things that will, I believe,
Mm.
be more of a feed stimulant. But I mean, it's very closely linked. You could turn it around the other way like you did, but it's just the way I look at it that, I think certain things stimulate feed more after the bait's been ingested.
Yeah. Okay, I'm with you. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's certain amino acids that are only particularly rich in certain ingredients or bait types, and they are proven to be massive feed stimulants. They will actually increase that if people are farming carp, including these amino acids in the feed systems, will actually massively stimulate feed. It'll increase how much the carp will eat of the food stuff.
Yeah.
So that doesn't really happen until the bait's been ingested, sort of thing.
Yeah. But there's other whether it's aminos or nucleotides that will be released, and that will cause them to want to feed, and that's before they've had anything hit their mouth, right? You're just saying it can go a step further once they do start chewing the food.
Yeah, I mean, a carp anyway can as good as taste the food anyway before it even eats it.
Exactly, that was what I was thinking.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it can
100%.
Yeah, no, 100%. A carp can taste a food item due to its chemoreceptor system before it's even ingested it. But then I think they can't actually taste it to the same degree as they will do once they've cracked it open with the teeth, once it's in the mouth, because that's where the taste receptors are massively concentrated, so it's going on a lot more there.
Yeah, exactly. As well as that, the bait, of course, is being broken up, and obviously those.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's releasing. That's it. It's releasing more things. Yeah. But I mean, another thing that we could talk about. I mean, we are getting quite in depth here, but I mean, a lot of people, who get into bait at varying degrees, they could be forgiven for just thinking that they've only got two chemosensory systems, the olfaction and the gustation, but they haven't. They've actually got other cells. They're called solitary sensory cells, and these things haven't even been elucidated by anyone, any of the top scientists. It's still a work in progress, and the range of chemicals that react and molecules that react with these things is absolutely astounding. So all the answers are still not there really, as regards attraction and all the rest of it.
Yeah, and I think, well, I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, but I think that's where testing comes in, and I think that's why you can have a bait that's freaking amazing on paper. It's got all of the supposed amino acids catered for, yada, 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 and then you've got something else which on paper should be totally inferior, but they want to feed on that so much more and so much hard. I think that probably explains that, doesn't it? It's the side of the science that hasn't yet been unearthed.
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely on the right track, but it has actually been unearthed in some ways. It just depends how much you want to look into it, because, like I say, I mentioned possibly talking about the HMV theory, and this comes back to this, that I think lots of things, lots of factors that determine how successful a bait is are not linked to the nutrition of the bait. A lot of it's linked to brain chemistry. Now, this is a massively overlooked area in carp bait. The only thing that I've seen talked about, and it's only in the last few years, is the milk proteins. The milk proteins have got what's called bovine casomorphins in, which is basically drugs. It's opioids. It's in cheeseburgers. McDonald's know this. That's why people love their cheeseburgers. It's in their cheese slices and the cheeseburgers. And this can react with the carp's brain. So the carp can develop an attachment to the food source once they're ingesting it, and because they're no different than anything else. Everything's governed by the brain. But there's other areas of bait that are not looked at all. I did submit an article to one of the big magazines. I mean, the magazines are dead anyway now, and it was all about wheat and bait, because you can get exactly the same reaction from wheat. I mean, wheat's cheap and cheerful. I mean, you know, the ingredient that most people associate with wheat is semolina, which is supposedly a crap ingredient. But I'm 100% convinced that you can develop an attachment, an addiction, whatever you want to call it, in fish by feeding them wheat. You know, a bait that's rich in wheat and, you know, bird food baits and all the rest of it. So, yeah, I mean, that's another thing. I could chat about that for a long time because I've done a lot of work on that side of things. But, yeah, I think a lot of it, it's massively overlooked in bait. It's brain chemistry. You know, and they're no different than any other animal. Like us, you develop, you know, affinities for things, all the rest of it through taste and how it interacts with your brain, how it makes you feel, how it makes your body feel. And that's a massive area in bait that's not really focused on massively. I mean, you hear some people, Mark McKenna spoke about it quite a few years back, but it's always just about the milk proteins. And, you know, I've got this massive theory on wheat. So, yeah.
Yeah, just on, I think what we'll do in a moment is talk about the HMV theory. But just whilst we're kind of on the topic of milks, and a moment ago we were talking about the taste. So hydrolyzed milks, right? This is something that I'm currently just perfecting the levels of, and I'm really in the mind of less is more. But hydrolyzed milks, do you feel that they inherently carry gustatory issues and that they work better at lower levels?
I could only talk about this from a theoretical angle because I've never used them. I've never felt the need to use hydrolyzed milk proteins. You know, I've used lots of milk proteins over the years, made a lot of bait with higher levels of milks in, but I've never gone down the route of the hydrolyzed milks. A couple of reasons, really. I think one is the cost is quite prohibitive. But also, as you say, I'm not quite certain about there's going to be a taste issue there because you can always counteract that anyway with your other things in your bait. So I mean, yeah, there is. I mean, if you look at the classical scientific data, there is amino acids that shown to be deterrent in the feeding stakes, but what you've got to remember, all this is conducted with single amino acids in tailored foodstuffs. In a bait situation, it's totally different. You're never going to get that with a bait because it's a mishmash of all different things. So you're presenting amino acids to a carp and a bait much the same as it comes across them in nature. They're in a mixed format. They're never in a singular format. So it's, yeah, I don't think you would ever probably encounter any massive issues with that. Although that said, there is certain additives that if you go too high, you know, you're shooting yourself in the foot. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So HMV.
Well, I mean, if you were using some hydrolyzed milks and you're getting some good results, I wouldn't be surprised in the slightest that they're doing the job for you. But on a commercial.
No, not if I go.
Yeah, so they're not working at high levels. So what's been happening when you've been whacking them in there? I mean, what are you talking by high? 10%.
10% exactly. So I tried 10%.
Yeah.
They have, you know, shown interest, but they have not fed, you know, to any great degree. 3% I've found totally different story. Same mix, like obviously everything is exactly the same. I'm really lucky.
What's the other? Yeah, go on, carry on.
I was going to say I'm really lucky. I've got a water wet, which is like it couldn't be any better for testing on fish.
Tap water, clear job.
I'm totally clear. It's in an out of bounds area. There's no one fishes it anyway. You can't fish there. You can view them perfectly, but it doesn't get any footfall. They're not fed bread all the time or anything like that. It is literally perfect. Although soon I'm building a big pond in my garden, which I'll have test fish in. But so 10%, like literally deteriorates the bait a lot, a hell of a lot. There's no palatants in there. There's no kind of sweeteners in there or anything like that. So
no sugars, no sugar, no liquid sugar sources or anything.
No liquid sugar sources. No. I mean, there's carbs in it. Obviously, you can't make a bait with no carbohydrate.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a high milk protein bait anyway. So I mean, there's 1,000 variables of these things, isn't there? If it was a lower milk protein bait, could I get away with the 10%? Quite possibly, but there's just a very, very distinct difference between 10% and 3%, and 3% is kicking its ass. And I would say 3% is better than with it than with it not being there at all. Interesting, right?
Yeah.
And obviously that 3% is taken up.
I mean, what's the other 7% being replaced with when you go down to the 3?
So I try and even up all the ingredients up so it doesn't make too much of a difference. I don't want to divulge.
But when you put the 10 in, when you put in the 10% of the hydrolyzed milk in, and then you're dropping down to the 3, what you're replacing the 7% with?
The bulk ingredients will all be adjusted accordingly.
Yeah, so it's not. I mean, because some bulk ingredients are far more attractive than others.
Yeah, no. So this is it's not like I'm dropping down the LT94 or anything like that. No, I would call them just fillers, binders, soya, semo.
Yeah.
Those kind of things. So in my mind, and you're right. Like that could be changing it completely, but they're not. How do I put it? I mean, the hydrolyzed milk should be infinitely more attractive than soya or semo. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Yeah. So I don't feel like I'm increasing or decreasing something that is really aiding attraction.
Yeah.
Make sense?
Yeah, I mean, some of the bulk ingredients are far more attractive than others, especially anything based on maize. If you're using anything based on maize, that's pretty good.
There's a bit of Super Gold 60 in it. Yeah, there's Super Gold 60 in it, but I haven't changed that amount.
You don't change that though, no.
No, the 7% has not come from that. So I'm convinced it's due to the hydrolyzed milk.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, what is the hydrolyzed milk you're using? What is the hydrolyzed casein or whey protein or what?
It's whey. It's 71%. It's whey. Hydrolyzed whey, 71%. You can get a higher hydrolysis whey protein, but that's the one I've got. Yeah.
Interesting. I mean, it's like pre-digested fish meal. I was never really an enormous advocate of it, really, until probably only about...
Really?
Because when I started making bait, I'd never even heard of pre-digested fish meal. And it just seemed like anything with fish meal, and it was a brilliant bait anyway. But then when I started using the pre-digested fish meal, which is probably only 12 years ago, no, probably a bit longer than that. Did notice that the bait was massively more attractive to nuisance fish. So that was obviously increasing the attraction of the bait massively. And also, to a degree, I mean, this is getting back to the amino acid thing. You can almost do away with even using any additional attractors when you're using pre-digested fish meal, because it is that good. It is that good an attractor. It really is a good attractor. And you don't need massive amounts of that either. But I mean, saying that, it all depends on your bulk fish meal anyway, because not a fish meal is not a fish meal. Not all fish meals are the same, and the better quality that your fish meal is, the closer it is to a pre-digested fish meal. So
yeah. Okay, all right. Tell you what, Dean, like 2 things. We got to do tipple of the episode. We're deep in this episode. We haven't even done tipple of the episode. As well as that, I've got to just check Pete's still alive. You all right, Pete?
I'm still here. Yeah, I'm listening.
Still there, Pete? Yeah, still there.
I'm in awe. So, as all the listeners know, I've not really been rolling bait a huge amount for the last probably 5 or 6 years. So, this is just sort of firing all sorts of things in my brain. Taking me back, wanting me to try different things, and I'm just enjoying listening to you guys sort of like riff it. It's good.
Superb.
But yeah, so tipple of the episode, you forgot to mention it, Sam, earlier. What are you drinking tonight, buddy?
Well, let's let our guest go first. Dean, what are you drinking, mate?
Well, tonight, drinking a drink that I don't drink very often, but I do enjoy it, the odd Guinness. So I bought myself 8 cans of Guinness tonight from the shop on the way home from work, and think I'm on the 3rd one. So yeah, Guinness for me tonight, boys.
Keep drinking, Dean. Get loose. Get giving those secrets away, mate.
Yeah. So what are you on, Sam?
Me, I've got. I'm usually, if I have beer, I'm usually into my real ales. But I've got a couple of Heinekens. I got Krabbies, and then because I'm like really noticing the drop in temperature, so I'm getting a bit, festive already. I've got a bit of Cointreau.
I've seen the size of the bottle as well, Sam. If you get through that tonight, mate, somebody might have to take over.
Mate, it could happen. It could happen. Yeah.
Yeah, it's happened before.
Yeah, it's happened before. I did a bottle of rum. I've done and some beers. I've done a hell of a lot on these podcasts. Awful. If anyone listens to the Tommy Bish interview, I was absolutely fucking plastered on that interview. I couldn't even finish it. It's embarrassing. But yeah, oh well. That's the beauty of a podcast.
It's all part of the fun.
Yeah, you do what you want. There's no one there to moderate.
You're not offending anybody, are you?
Exactly, mate. Exactly.
Well, you might be. You might be after that bottle of Cointreau.
I might be, mate. Yeah, I might get a bit lively. I've been known to. Yeah, Pete. I mean, obviously we've spoke. What are you having, Pete? Actually, you haven't told us.
Yeah, what's Pete's having?
Posh Pete is having gin this week. I've got 4 bottles of San Miguel, and I've just cracked open my 3rd. So they've been flowing pretty well. Watching you guys or listening to you guys sort of riff on bait.
Nice, mate. I do like a San Miguel.
Yeah, I like San Miguel. Yeah, it's a nice drink. That. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. Go on, Sam. You said it sounded like you were going to have a question, mate.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Pete, do you want to expand on anything that we've already spoken about, or have you got any questions for Dean?
Yeah, I was going to sort of drop in on the amino acid front, and it's something that I used to see crop up all the time, and it was people getting really hung up on amino acids and the denaturing process during boiling, and it was just a question to Dean of, do you think amino acids, once they've denatured, are they still attractive to carp? Is it a big issue?
Well, no. I mean, they're not going to be attractive to carp if the molecular structures change, because that's what interacts with the chemoreceptors. But so yeah, I mean, if they're denatured, they're kaput, like, they're dead, they're no good. You hear people talking about amino acids getting denatured in bait, and I mean, I won't mention any names, but I saw an angler on a video last night on YouTube, and he was saying amino acids are denatured after 15 seconds. Well, they're not. I mean, there might be if you've just applied a liquid to some bait during the rolling process and then you're whacking it in some boiling water. But I mean, if your bait's got lots of protein entities in there, then a couple of minutes in some boiling water is not going to massively zap away all the amino acids, So, because you've got to remember that most of them are in intact proteins anyway. So it's the degradation process that's releasing these things that's actually helping the attraction of the bait. But yeah, you mean your liquid-based stuff, your liquids, they're rich in amino acids. You're going to lose some during the cooking process. But even with that, you hear people saying, don't bother adding any liquids to your bait because there's none left after you've cooked it. Well, that's not entirely true either, If that was true, then the things that you had, like liquid flavors, would all be gone. And then it's sort of like if I'm making a shelf life bait, which I don't really advocate, but I do make shelf life baits. If the liquid that I was adding to stabilize the bait, that would all be lost. And you're going to lose some. I mean, the best thing you can ever do to actually get an angle on this is if you go onto the, I think it's the FDA in America, Food and Drug Administration. I think it's the FDA. You go on there, and there's a massive study about all foodstuffs, and they've got tables Shows you the nutrition raw, the nutrition parboiled, the nutrition after so long boiled, and you can obviously see the gradual decrease in the levels of the amino acids, all the rest of it, the vitamins and all the rest of it, but it's a very gradual scale. So, these things are not going to be completely destroyed in your bait after a cook. But the name of the game anyway, for me personally, is keeping the cook times to a bare minimum. I aim to get a bait that's throwing stick friendly, but with the bare minimum cook. And I don't like an hard bait, and I don't think carp like hard baits, but that's another issue. But yeah, amino acids, they do get denatured by boiling water, of course, but you're never going to lose everything entirely from a bait unless it's a very poor bait.
Tiger nuts and peanuts. Don't get much.
Tiger nuts,
they're hard as
nails. Yeah, rock hard. Yeah. But I agree with you there. I don't know actually with peanuts, they're not that hard. Not when I use them, anyway. But tigers is a bait that I've never really used much. But yeah, carp do like tiger nuts, but I've tested hard bait versus soft. For me personally, there's so many advantages to a softer bait than a rock hard bait. Which is something I control. I don't know. Maybe you might like a hard bait, and they certainly catch carp, but
yeah, I don't to be honest, mate. I'm just playing devil's advocate.
You've got to look. You've got to look at all the natural foods in a carp's diet, and people will go, "Well, swan mussels, it's rock hard." They'll eat swan mussels of varying sizes, but they're only after the soft juicy bit inside the shell. Once they've cracked that shell, snails got an hard shell, but they're only after the soft juicy bit inside. Shrimps, bloodworms, they're all soft, they're all juicy. They're not rock hard. They're just after the flesh inside, aren't they?
Exactly.
That's my opinion, anyway. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
And the proof in the pudding for me is when, I've had guys come to me in the past on waters that I've been fishing or lads have been fishing using my gear, and they'll say, "Oh, I've done 12 months, I haven't had a fish," and I'll say, "Really?" And they're like, "Yeah." And so I ask them what bait they're using, and one of the first questions that I ask them is, can you use a bait straight out of the bag on the hair for longer than 24 hours? And if they say yes, then I say, well, personally, there's one of your problems. Like, your bait's not reacting properly in the water, so try some of this. I said, you'll get away with it for so long, but you'll probably need hardened duke baits with my bait, because it just won't withstand being out that long. Because, to me, a bait that's still hard on a hair straight out of the bag for a day or 2 days is just basically something that's kicking out the attraction signal from a flavour. It's not doing anything else. It's not breaking down. It's not kicking everything else out of the bait. You want a bait that's softening up. That's my opinion. You want a bait that's softening up inside the water.
That's a very, very good point. In your opinion, how should we factor in optimal levels of attractor leak-off, given that we don't actually know when the carp is going to eat the bait? Like, they could eat it after 2 minutes if you're throwing it in, or 2 days. So how would you factor that in to get a steady leak off, or wouldn't you?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I'll tell you how I factor that in.
Go on.
By not piling all my bait in one go.
Yeah.
There's your answer.
Match style.
Don't put all your bait in one go.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Keep trickling a bit in. Keep a bit going in.
But do you keep casting, changing your hook bait, or do you have a different hook bait?
No, I don't do that. No, I don't do that. I don't do that.
So your hook bait is the one they're going to pick up. So does that stay out?
Yeah, for me, unless if I'm fishing, the only time I'll move my hook bait is if I definitely think I'm on fish, I should have had a bite, and I think the rig's sitting wrong, there's something wrong, the rig's wrong or whatever, and then I'll replace it. But Pete's buzzing his ear, is he?
Pete's got his vibrator on or something. I don't know.
Oh, is he? Oh, Jesus.
He's probably got a vibrating chair. He's very posh, mate. He's very posh. His chair's probably massaging him right now. Yeah. So fair enough. But you see, you're kind of like trickling the bait in just to ensure that there's always leak off going. But if your rig is staying out, that hook bait could have been out there for ages. So whilst you're keeping the area primed with your new free offerings, your hook bait is more aged. Do you know what I'm getting at, mate?
Yeah. Very good point. Very good point. And that's why I always boost all meat baits up. All my hook baits that I make, they've all got boosted attractor levels. You know, they're all elevated. For two reasons. The one you've just said, you don't know how long it's going to sit out there for, so you're trying to keep that level to a certain degree. And also, I mean, it's not always something that I want to do in my fishing, but on paper it attracts the fish to your hook bait, so it's the one that gets picked up first because people want the bite, people want the bite, don't they? They want to hook the fish, and that's it. Yeah. So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and obviously you're saying about boiling minimal times. I'm exactly the same. The old thing of, you got to cook, if you're using eggs in your mix, you got to cook it through because of the trypsin inhibitor. Do you buy into that, or do you think that's largely bullshit these days?
No. I mean, there is inhibitors in various things, but it all comes down to what you're trying to achieve with the bait. I mean, you can make a perfectly good bait that's going to catch you plenty of fish that's not actually that nutritional, but that's another story. So, yeah. I mean, it all depends on the objective, doesn't it? I mean, if you'd asked me that question, let's say even as recently as 6 years ago, the answer would have probably been different. But my thinking has changed massively about bait in the last 5-6 years.
Talk to us about that then, mate, because I think where you're going with that is the whole HMV thing. Tell me if I'm wrong, but I think back in the day, certainly when we used to, back on the heyday of the forum, which was probably 10-15 years ago, I think you were a HMV guy, and now you've swung away from that. So talk to us about your views on the HMV, high nutritional value, for those of you that don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to do a short synopsis of what it's all about and what it actually means. I mean, the supposed theory is that if you can make a bait that perfectly matches the carp's nutritional requirements, then that'll be the ultimate bait, and it'll choose that food source over anything else that's offered to it. And also, if you can extend that theory slightly, it's going to be better for the bigger fish, and it'll have an indefinite lifespan. And I used to wholeheartedly believe this because as soon as I started using fish meal baits to a bigger degree on the first water that I ever got into, where I'd got a reasonable chance of catching 20-pound fish, it was the fish meal baits that won hands down on that water every time. But my thinking now is not centered around the fact that that's due to the extra nutrition that they get from fish meal. I think it's due to the attraction. It's a supremely attractive ingredient. It's very digestible. Probably mimics natural food quite well as well. So, but yeah, and then all of that was completely turned 180 degrees for me in 2014. So, that's when the HMV theory sort of went out the window, and I was sort of really investigating everything else related to bait, and I could just see all these glaring holes in the HMV theory. And then I actually satisfied these questions in my mind with practical application of it, whereby I created a bait that wasn't a HMV bait at all. It's got a good food value, but it's certainly not a HMV bait. And for one particular fish on a very large water, that was a fairly friendly fish, that bait just blew a HMV bait of mine completely out of the water. It went from the HMV style fish meal baits catching extremely well on that water, but not catching that fish, to that fish getting caught 14 times on the lower food value bait within 12 months.
What do you feel was working so well in that lower food value bait that made that fish get repeatedly caught?
I think it was the attraction, the taste, and it had got an addiction to wheat. That fish has definitely got a thing for wheat. That fish has got a thing for wheat. Now, I'm not going to sling any mud or anything, but there's lots of baits on the market. Lots of baits. Very good baits, very successful baits from very big players in the bait game. And they're not particularly what you would call HMV style baits, but they've got a lot of wheat in them. Got a lot of wheat in them. Now, these guys either know what I know about this wheat thing, or they've sort of come to the same conclusion anyway, just through testing, but not with the theories that I've got behind it. You know, that fish, 100%, that carp, which may still be around, I don't know. I'm not fishing the water anymore. It hasn't been caught for 2 years. But that fish was definitely gravitated towards the wheat. I mean, all my baits have got wheat in, but I ain't never created a bait with as much wheat in as this bait.
Why is that? Why did it want that wheat?
Brain chemistry. I think it was addicted to the wheat.
Talk about
much the same as cheeseburgers. Yeah, much the same as the wheat, as the milk. You know, these casomorphins, which I'm 100% convinced carp get addicted to, and do actually interact with the brain, and it can increase the feed reaction to the bait when they come across it, and obviously search behaviour and all the rest of it. You can achieve much the same thing with wheat. It's actually, you know, you can find all this out. You can go on the internet, you find all this out. There's opioid-like peptides in wheat, they're called gluteomorphins. I mean, and the question you've got to ask yourself is, why do we all have our daily bread? Why is bread synonymous all over the world? Every culture eats a form of bread. And I'll be honest with you, if my wife said to me, I can't have a round of bread every now and again, I'd probably be a little bit disappointed, because I actually quite like eating bread, you know, so... You know, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I do. I know what I believe. I know what I believe.
Yeah. Have you looked into gliadin?
Yeah, it's the same. Yeah, gliadin. Yeah. It's another component. That's part of the gluteomorphin. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you feel it needs to be the whole package, or would you just say that it's the gliadin? Without getting too...
Well, It's the. I mean, I'm not 100%. I mean, the way it's all laid out in my brain is the wheat liberates the gluteomorphins, and that's the addictive component of the wheat-based ingredients. So if you've got a bait that's got, I mean, even semolina, a bait that's got a large amount of semolina in, or preferably bird foods, because bird foods are all heavily wheat-based, or even breadcrumb. Breadcrumb, you know, people rubbish breadcrumb as an ingredient. It's a superb ingredient. You know, it's a superb ingredient in the right quantities. You know, you've got to be careful with breadcrumb, because you can't use too much of it with certain formulations. But it's a very good ingredient, and people just say, oh, you know, people knock companies that use breadcrumb. I mean, I use breadcrumb in one bait. That particular bait is the only bait that I use breadcrumb in. It's not the only wheat source in there, but breadcrumb is. You know, it's certainly not an ingredient that I would look down on. If somebody said they use breadcrumb in a bait, I'd go, yeah, well, I know it works. Can't like bread.
It's interesting. In a way, you're still getting back around to proteins, right? With the gliadin. There's still there, right?
What's the... Yeah, I mean, are you actually talking about the wheat protein? Yeah.
So gliadin. To be honest with you,
the wheat gluten. You mean the gluten? You're talking about the gluten? Yeah, I mean,
not gluten.
That's why it's.
So gliadin is a compound. It's a protein compound. And to be honest, I'm drawing on my nutrition side of things, which obviously I do for a living.
Yeah.
So it's different. I'm not drawing on my bait knowledge now. I'm drawing on, you know, like human biology. So there might be a bit of a kind of disconnect there. But yeah, gliadin it's a compound. It's a protein compound, and it's the gliomorphine. Okay, that may well be the addictive proponent of it, but the gliadin itself is the antagonist proponent to us, to humans. I'm not saying that's the case with carp. I wouldn't have a clue if that's the case with carp. I would probably suggest no, due to their digestive system, which is very different from ours. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that gliding that you're talking about, it's not something that I've actually focused on massively, but I think that's just, it's, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's just a component of the wheat gluten, and I think that is actually what the gluteomorphins are liberated from that gliadin.
Yeah, that's
but yeah,
correct.
I mean, my thinking about this whole wheat thing, it's obviously the protein is important because that's where the opioid peptides come from. But it's the peptides, it's the peptides. I'm a massive believer in this developing an attachment with fish to bait, and it works. It simply works. It's getting more and more difficult to achieve now because waters are getting that busy. There's a massive cross section of baits going in, but if you can get on somewhere where you can, let's say, get the lion's share of the food, and I'm pretty sure you can develop these attachments in the fish.
Yeah. Just to be clear for people that are interested, which probably isn't anyone, but the gliadin, it's not, except for us maybe, it's not exclusive to gluten at all. You get gliadin in oats, millet, and they don't contain gluten inherently. And obviously, that they, depending on opinion, they can be good ingredients for carp as well. So it's the gliadin is definitely not exclusive to gluten. I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, but as I say, for me with the wheat thing, it's all rests upon the fact that they can liberate these gluteomorphins, which I'm 100% convinced that carp can get addicted to, attached to, just the same as they can with milk proteins.
It's very interesting. That is really interesting. Would you? So obviously this carp kind of got hooked on it in a way. The pun not intended there.
100%.
Yeah,
100%.
More ways than one, right? So do you?
Yeah, I mean,
would you say that would potentially be the case with any carp? My target fish. Do you feel that it would be the same case for that fish, or do you think it's water dependent? Do you think it's individual fish preference, or what?
Yeah, they're all carp, just the same as we're all humans. But and yeah, the opioid thing and the wheat thing, it should work across the board, really. But you do get, I think, massive variations in preferences with different carp for different foodstuffs and different baits, different tastes, because they're all individuals, so they've all got slightly different genetic makeups. And I think that bait was just perfect for that fish. I mean, it caught loads of other carp from that lake, but I mean, the whole thing behind all of it was I was sort of baffled that this fish wasn't getting caught on a couple of other baits that I make, which were catching far more than the fair share of fish from the water every year, and it was just astounding that this fish was getting caught by people who were catching maybe a tenth of the fish that some lads were catching, and these lads weren't catching it. So I just had to go back to the drawing board, and I wanted to catch this fish myself as well. And that's when I just came up with this wheat thing, and as it all progressed and snowballed, and the more I looked into it, because I already knew about the milk issue, it just all came to fruition, and it certainly worked for that fish. So yeah.
So I think what you're saying is you can bypass the need for milks and use a potentially cheaper feedstock in the terms of wheat. Do you feel that? Sorry, I was just going to say, do you feel that the milk proteins offer anything else other than richer amounts of amino acids?
Yeah, lots more. Lots.
They do.
Yeah, milk proteins are superb ingredients. I just wish I could make a bait and I could sell it cheap enough with a good chunk of milk in. I mean, I do sell a bait with milks in, but I don't sell as much of it as the fish meal based baits because it's more expensive, and the fish meal based baits are extremely effective. So unfortunately, the money talks. But You know, my experiences with milk baits, not mega high milk baits, because I don't believe in the old school milk baits. I mean, they're effective, but they were wrong in many ways. But they catch carp, but you know, they're overcooking things on different levels. But
Okay.
but yeah, milk proteins are superb. I've got massive theories about that as well. Well, they're not, yeah, they're theories, but at the same time, anecdotal evidence and factual things certainly backs up my thinking on those aspects in bait. So yeah.
So high levels of milk. What you're saying that you disagree with the old, you know, high pro milks. What is it you disagree?
Yeah, I
with?
mean, I mean, they were just way too high. The carp can't even utilize that much milk protein because of its digestive system. So yeah, I mean, although they'd make effective baits, I mean, the guys back then who were making them obviously knew they were effective. They were catching fish, but I bet you any money that they could have halved the milk protein content in the bait, and they wouldn't have seen any diminishing results. They'd have still probably got the same result, you know.
Yeah, for sure. So, okay, so kind of moving on to a selfish question. Let's say there's someone who has decided they need to compete with bait on their water. This is me, to be honest with you. There's a lot of people on there that have got shed loads more time than me. Like, I've got a quick overnighter once per week.
Yeah.
You can't, in my opinion, most baits are good these days, right? Most of the main brands, yeah, we could pick holes in them. They all catch fish, right? You can't.
They all catch fish, yeah.
You can't. It's very fucking hard to compete with someone that has 3 or 4 nights a week if you've only got one night. I don't care what bait you're using, in my opinion. So for me now, I'm like, okay, that's fine. You know, I have to use bait to my advantage. The water's getting a lot of very good quality fish meal from a few different manufacturers who actually make very good baits. I'm trying to shine through them. So I go, and I'm currently looking at milk protein, some bird food, some cereals as well, and then an on-point attractor package. Do you feel that is the way to go with that? Would you go that way with it? Or would you do something else that perhaps I'm overlooking?
Well, I mean, this is something that I've been thinking about massively over the last few years because, like yourself, I don't get lots of time for fishing. I can have little spells where I might go fishing every week for a few weeks, and then it might be a few months before I go or whatever. But I think a lot of it really depends on the stocking levels of the water.
Low stock.
How many different baits? Sorry, low stock. Yeah, well,
very
yeah,
low
the
stock.
stocking levels of the. See, if you're on a low stock water, for me personally, I would say that obviously location's a massive factor in catching anything. But then I would say it all depends how deep your pocket is. Because even if you can't fish there very often, if you can put a lot of food in and it's good food, then you might get results as good as somebody who's got 3 nights a week.
Yeah.
You know, because I do massively believe. I mean, a lot of people nowadays. I mean, as you just touched on, there's lots of good baits out there, and only a fool would ever try and sell a bait that was no good anyway. Nobody's going to sell anything that has not caught carp. You know, it's as simple as that. Yeah. But some baits are much better than others. I mean, I wouldn't even be interested in bait if I didn't believe that bait was a massive factor in fishing. Then I would never have been interested in bait at all. Because then I believe bait's an enormous factor in carp fishing. But it's not just all about boilies. You know, I've caught carp on maggots, sweet corn, all sorts of things. But bait is a massive factor in carp fishing because it's the only thing that you've got in your armory to entice them to pick up your hook. And if they don't pick up your hook, you don't catch them.
Yeah. So do you feel that we can somehow optimize baits in any way possible for, say, quick overnighters, opposed to the longer route that a lot of people take? And I kind of know the answer. I'm just saying it, you know.
Yeah, it's like now. I've sort of been using a lot of ground bait over the last few years. Massively underused tactic. And the ground baits that I'm using, and I'm using them to pretty good success, to be honest with you. They're basically based on the base mixes for the boilies. So to me, it's the ultimate way of introducing that bait. You're getting all the food signals, but you get them instantaneously because it's an uncooked base mix. So you've just multiplied your attraction of that bait by tenfold, maybe even more, depending on how you apply it, and it certainly works. It certainly works because it's not conventional. It's unconventional. People don't use ground bait anymore.
Yeah.
But that said, there is lots of companies now plugging the dusting things off with powders and all the rest of it, and all you're doing is, I think on a lot of waters now, all you're actually doing, because carp has seen that much food, and they've seen a lot of good bait, so I don't think there's any problem for the nutrition these days for carp, which you can see by the fact that carp are just getting bigger everywhere. I think all that you're trying to do is maximize your chances when you're actually on the bank fishing to stop the fish on your spot. So you just got to try and make your spot that much more enticing than somebody else's.
Yeah, I agree. I think with some of these waters that do get a relative amount of angling pressure, I think the fish can definitely spook off those areas. You can have, the most perfect amino nucleotide balance pumping out, but I think it can just be too blatant for the carp. I think it can really turn them off.
Yeah, possibly.
It's a bit too good for them. A bit too good for them compared to, say, them coming across a fly hatch. Okay, you got visuals, or a bloodworm bed. There's probably less attractors being pumped out than there is if you're, glugging your baits and you got some powder on there. But I think, that they'd still happily go down and feed on that. And I appreciate a lot of that is conditioning. I guess what I'm trying to say is I think we can over-attract our baits. And I know that flies in the face of what I said on previous podcasts, because I'm big into my liquids and things like that. But I think it's a valid point on these busier waters. Something I'm starting to see more now. Yeah, slightly different waters.
I mean, the thing is, there's just so many factors. Some waters, it's like spotting's the kiss of death, isn't it? You start spotting on some waters, and every carp within 50 yards of you is gone.
Yeah.
And they're not coming back for a while. Whereas on others, it's like ringing the dinner bell. But it all goes down to stocking densities and all the rest of it, and conditioning. But no, I think clouding the water up is definitely something that not many people do, and it does work. It does work. There isn't many carp around that won't have a little investigation of whether some water that gets clouded up by. That could even be. That could even just be from a stream that runs into the lake, and it's started raining, and there's a little bit more colour coming from the stream. But they usually investigate things like that.
I think that's pH as well, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, you're going to get variations. Yeah, you're going to get all different signals coming in from that water. Yeah, because it's different than the water that's already in the lake. So yeah.
Do you look into pH much?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. Mainly with attractors. Yeah.
Thoughts on it?
Well, yeah, what you actually have spoken about most of the time is that carp are attracted to acidic things or whatever, but it actually goes back to this ionization process, because that's actually the key to flavors and essential oils, the ionization, because that's what's detected by the carp's chemoreceptors. Now, you get ionization with anything that's a different pH from the surroundings. So yeah, anything that's got a different pH is causing localized ionization. People used to say localized pH shifts, but it's not. It's ionization. And this was my main argument about the essential oils, when people are saying carp can't detect essential oils. And these were guys who know quite a lot about bait, but they obviously didn't know this about bait. Anything that reacts with water, as I say, the three things in an essential oil that irrefutably interact with water are phenols, esters, and carboxylic acids. You get any essential oil with a phenol in, a carboxylic acid, or an ester, and that will attract a carp. 100% guaranteed.
Yeah.
While you're on the, sorry, I'm going to jump in. I've been quiet for a long time. So while you're on the essential oil thing, you mentioned sweet orange earlier. What is it
Yeah.
that attracts you to that? And I ask that from a personal note, only because I've recently just I'm sort of like rolling some hook baits, and it's something I've been looking at for a certain bait I've got in mind. What is it about the sweet orange essential oil that that draws you to it?
Yeah, well, what it was is when I got this idea in my mind about this this wheat bait, when I got this theory about this fish being attracted to this wheat, I wanted to make it a bait as well that was going to be good in the winter. So I thought, right, I'll stick an essential oil in here. Cinnamon was a big one, like Sam says. I've been using that for years, and that's superb, all year round. But it is extremely effective in cold water. And cinnamon, I don't know if you know, it's thermogenic. I mean, Sam will know what that is. I mean, you might do, Pete, as well, but Sam will.
Yeah.
Background. It's like it generates heat. So if you actually ingest cinnamon, it does actually. I mean, it's only a minute amount, but it actually generates heat in your body, which obviously, on a logical level, is something that's useful in the winter. So, and I think this is one of the reasons why cinnamon is good in the winter. So I wanted another essential oil because I didn't want to use the cinnamon because I've used these. I wanted another one that's thermogenic, and I also wanted that was lighter than water because the specific gravity of all attractors is different. Some are heavier than water and they spread across the bottom, and some are lighter than water. So ideally the ones that are lighter in water, especially in the winter when carp are not on the bottom most of the time anyway. I thought, well, if you use an essential oil that's lighter than water, it's going to drop down, So that was the two criteria that I needed. I needed one that was thermogenic and one that had a specific gravity less than 1. So I came across this sweet orange, and as I say, they're not all the same. So I can't actually speak about every orange oil because they're not all the same. But I came across this particular one, and I thought, yeah, that's it. I'm going with that one, and the rest is history. Like it just did the job, and I'm 100% convinced that attractor does actually pull fish down in deep water as well, because I've used it on places that are 18, 20 foot deep, and I've caught fish on single hook baits. I mean, you can do that with any bait, I suppose, and people will say, but at the end of the day, you can only go off what happens, can't you? And it's a fact that it's lighter than water. It actually does. If I put a drop of that essential oil on a stick and cast a hook bait out, then for the next 2 hours, I'll just keep seeing a little flat spot over the top of that bait with the essential oil rising off the stick.
Just off the single hook bait, is this, or is this off your feed bait as well?
Just off a single hook bait with a little tiny stick on, or even soak the hook bait in the neat essential oil, and you'll just see it pop into the surface every now and again. So there you go. The proof's there that it's lighter than water. I mean, it's not an oil; it's an essential oil.
Yeah.
So.
No, that's it.
But yeah, I mean,
go on.
Yeah, if you're looking for an orange oil, you could do worse than try the one from Oils for Life. There's a few different ones, but yeah, that's where I got mine.
Yeah, no, I'll definitely check it out. Do you know what? I've just ordered one. I actually got it from, I think it was Northern Baits. I don't know if you're familiar with them.
Yeah, you probably paid a bit of carp tax on that one, haven't you?
I'm sure I have, mate. Yeah, I'm sure I have.
Yeah.
I'm sure I have. And sorry, I'm going to sort of like jump back as well. So you guys were sort of riffing about HNV baits, but this is something I wanted to sort of like talk about with you was vitamins. Is a vitamin supplement you'd look towards in an HNV bait, and are vitamins attractive in their own right?
Yeah. Yes, there's the answer. I'm not actually going to entirely give the game away.
Okay.
But what I will say to you is that some vitamins are attractive in their own right, and one is a massive factor to the success of any yeast-based products that you can use in your bait. One vitamin that's particularly rich in yeast, and that's proven attractant in carp. And then no, not B vitamins, Sam. They're rich in B vitamins, but there's a vitamin in yeast which is called choline, and a carp can actually detect choline.
Yeah.
And that's massively attractive to fish, choline, carp in particular. And then the other The other main thing with the vitamins is that some of them, namely vitamin C, does massively increase the protein utilization of a bait. So if you could make a brilliant bait on paper, you might have gone to the trouble of doing all the amino acid profiling if that's what you want to do, if that's what you're trying to achieve. But if you ain't got much vitamin C in there, then it's not going to get utilized properly. I mean, it might do, because you've got the issue nowadays of they're picking up all different foodstuffs, and they've got natural food as well. But if you're trying to create the complete package, then you want some vitamins in there. But that's not necessarily to say that you need to put a vitamin supplement in there, because it all depends on the rest of the base mix. But it certainly won't hurt. Let's put it that way.
So I've been, like I say, I've been out of the game a little while, but recently I've been researching like ascorbic acid and vitamin C.
Yeah, vitamin C. Yeah.
Is that something that in its own right would be attractive? Say, for example, if somebody was wanting to make hook baits, like they're wanting to make some pop-ups, not necessarily to complement a feed bait. Would you advise people sort of like go down the vitamin C route, or is that something you'd sort of say is only sort of utilized with sort of like a protein feed bait?
I've never come across any evidence, either practical or on any scientific studies, that vitamin C is an attractant to carp. I may be proven wrong, but I've never come across any. But there's definitely certain ingredients that have got a lot of vitamin C in that are very good. So
yeah. Okay. Yeah. No. Cool.
Have you ever looked at dihydroquercetin with vitamin C?
No, that's not one that's familiar with me. Sam, where's that from, Sam?
I believe it's a manufactured substance, extracted, but it's often used alongside vitamin C in humans. I didn't know if there was.
Oh right, what for utilization? Increase the utilization of it.
Exactly that. Yeah, I didn't know if there was something in it that would translate across to carp or not. I've not looked into it, but
there may well be. I mean, you've introduced me as a bit of a bait expert, but nobody knows everything about everything.
Of course not.
There's thousands of things out there. I mean, I've spoke to some big names in the bait game at times, and I've mentioned different things, and they sort of like look at you. You can hear the pause on the phone, and they'll say, well, "What are you using that for?" And you think, "Jesus, you've been making bait 30 years." But there'll be loads of things that they know about that I don't know about, and vice versa. That's the bait. That's the beauty of the bait game. There's so many different ways of achieving the same end result. It's you can spend a full lifetime making bait and still not make every formula what's going to be a real winner. But you find ones and you just stick with them, don't you?
Exactly, mate. Put it a different way: polyphenols, flavonols.
Yeah, I've heard of those. Yeah. I'm trying to think in what context of. Well, they're all related to the vitamins anyway, aren't they?
Well, it tends to be fruits, seeds.
Yeah.
Fruits and seeds mainly. Yeah. They're compounds. They're actually existent to stop animals eating them, but they actually.
Oh yeah, no. Actually, yeah.
Yeah.
Just triggered something in my mind there. Yeah,
I thought you would have.
I
thought you would have.
Yeah, you've got a possibility with certain things like that are not going to be very good for your bait. So yeah,
exactly, yeah.
As I say, I mean, I am terrible when I find something that works for massively focusing on it and getting right to the bottom of it, and I'll ignore other things now. Yeah. I mean, in some ways that's bad, but in other ways it's quite good, because you do actually get to the bottom of it and you 100% know why things are working and you've got a good grasp on it. And then a lot of the time you can carry that over to different things, related topics and areas. So. But there's going to be enormous areas that, I mean, it doesn't matter what bait maker you speak to or how successful their bait is. There's going to be massive areas where they're enormously deficient in, and there's other bait makers who are not. That's just the nature of the beast.
100%, mate. I'm not trying to catch you out. I was just seeing if you had
no.
But
Yeah.
I think there's an area there. I think there's scope to look there for sure, or other hormetic compounds. So like hormesis is obviously something that is good because it's bad in a way, which I guess that's probably a whole another podcast in itself. But yeah, I think there's a lot that we don't know about the compounds of things. And I mean, I know you said earlier that actually it has all been discovered. It has all been put to science. I don't know if that's the case with flavonols.
I said it hasn't.
I missed. Oh, did you? Oh, I've had too many beers already. Then.
No, I said
it. I
said it. No, I said it hasn't.
Ah.
There's lots of things. There's lots of things that have been elucidated, but it's like as I was saying about the the fundamental mechanisms of carp, the olfactory and the gustatory system. Yeah, they've been massively studied.
Yeah,
but there's a massive area. As I say, these solitary sensory cells that they've got. And nobody's got to the bottom of these, and these just seem to react to virtually anything. So people can talk about things and say, such and such says carp can't detect those. And I've even posed this question to him before, and I've said, have you considered the solitary sensory cells, because they've not been elucidated by anybody yet. So yeah, there's massive areas that have not been understood properly yet in fish detection mechanisms. So yeah,
if you're inclined to, if you get a chance, have a look at polyphenols, specifically flavonoids. I'd be really interested to see your opinion on that at a later date, maybe. It's interesting. I'm not sure if it's worthy of time or not. It's just something that's interesting to me. I don't have any conclusive thoughts on it.
Yeah, I'll have a look. Yeah, I'll have a look.
Yeah. Just quickly swinging back to what you're talking about, the vitamins. I mean, do you feel that you can just cover it with a bit of vitamin C, some brewer's yeast, and a bit of seaweed, or do you think going down the route of Equivite or Selenivite or even one of the modern carp vitamin compounds, right? Which route would you take with it?
I've done them all. I've done every route, and I've drawn a conclusion from it. But I'm not at this juncture going to say exactly what I believe. But I mean, you need vitamins and you need vitamins in your bait. Yeah. It's better to have vitamins in your bait. But obviously, as I said before, every formula is different. So I could say to somebody, and they might take it as gospel, you need a vitamin supplement in your bait. Now, without knowing what that bait's made up from, then I'm not really giving them good advice, because that bait might be made up of things that are covering the vitamin requirements. But it's not a necessity to use a vitamin supplement in bait. And anyway, all these so-called carp vitamin supplements, they're all just things rebranded. I would imagine. You can't beat things like your Selenivite. Selenivite's a little bit better than Equivite. There's dog ones. I think one's called Boost 200 or something. That's a good one as well.
Yeah, liquid, that one, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a liquid. Yeah.
Yeah, I used that for years. I forgot about that.
Yeah, I've never used that one, but I know all about it.
Is that for birds?
No, I think it's for dogs. Dogs, I think the one I'm sure it's for dogs. Yeah,
might be right.
Might be one for birds, but I mean, it's like you just said, birds. It's like all the bird foods, all the bird foods are supplemented with vitamins. So if you've got bird food in your bait, I mean, somebody could say they've got bird food in the bait. Now, there's a massive difference between having 5% bird food in your bait and 40%, isn't there? So
exactly. Just on that. Like, not really on that subject, but kind of. Old Ken, Ken Townley.
Ken Townley, yeah.
Yeah. He would say that, I mean, a little bit tongue-in-cheek. I don't want to discredit what he's saying, but, he would say a good carp bait would be very attractive to cats. I don't know if you saw him. He used to write about that back in the day when we were all involved in the forum. Do you any opinions on that?
Yeah, I agree with him.
You agree with him?
Cats and dogs, yeah. Cats and dogs.
See dogs. I think they'll fucking eat anything, but cats, I don't know. What is that? What's at play there?
I'll tell you a little story about that. A mate of mine who has bait from me, and I'm not going to plug the bait or anything. I'm not going to mention the name of the bait. I'll just say it's had plenty of milk proteins in it. He had a kitten. He went and fetched this kitten, and the kitten was going crazy for this bag of bait. He was actually getting, and this was a little baby, you know. And he said it was unbelievable. He said he just couldn't keep this kitten away from this bag of bait, you know. And it's like it wasn't an open bag. It was like I don't know, a couple of mil thick plastic bag full of bait, and this kitten was going crazy for this bag of bait. So yeah, there's something in it. Yeah.
Do you think that's because there's like the obvious thing of milk, kitten milk?
Milk, yeah.
Milks.
Yeah, I think it's something to do with the milk. Definitely something to do with the milk. But yeah, I mean, I would say, I mean, I know fish are not cats and dogs, but yeah, it's always a nice little test if a dog or a cat goes a little bit crazy for your bait, then you sort of know you're on the right lines. But I do know of one bait. I mean, I'm not going to mention any names again, but I do know of one bait, and I did find it very strange that some of the lads were talking about this bait, and they said the dog won't eat it. And I thought, Jesus, I've never known that with a good bait. And it catches fish, this bait does, but the dog wouldn't eat it. Yeah, I thought that was a bit certainly not something I've ever come across, because my dogs will eat all my baits. They love it.
Do you hold much stock in sugars from milks?
Yeah, lactose. Lactose, yeah, it's a good attractor. Lactose.
Yeah, oligosaccharides. I was kind of thinking of.
Yeah. I mean, carp are attracted to sugars anyway, you know. But for me, one of the best forms of sugar that you can use in your bait is molasses. You know, it's cheap, it's cheerful. Carp love it. You know,
it's the bream that love it as well, though.
Bream love it, yeah. Bream love it, but carp love it. Carp love it.
Yeah.
You know.
Is there a saccharide that you think carp particularly love, but bream don't? Asking for a friend.
Not really, to my knowledge, no.
No.
I mean, this is the problem. This is the problem that you've got with lots of things, that they're all cyprinid fish, and obviously they all share similar genetic makeup. So lots of them are attracted to the same things.
Yeah, exactly. And that is the problem, isn't it? You can often up the attraction, but you're upping the attraction to everything, which can give you untold problems, particularly on big pits with huge bream. It's a real issue, isn't it?
The same guy, the same chap with this cat, as I say, he's had bait off him for a long time. I mean, he's a friend anyway. And I changed something in a bait once, and I changed it purely and simply because not everybody fishes the same. So if I was like selling this bait, I mean, it's a long time ago to people, and they're using, I mean, I don't know, they're using one on the hair and 10 round the hook bait, and I thought to myself, that's not the way this bait works to the maximum effect. This bait's better when it's put in quantity, and not every bait's the same. So I just thought I can massively up the attraction in this bait just by a couple of simple additions to it, and I put some in. This bait, and he had a bag of this bait from me, and he rung me up and he said, "What have you put in that? Bream kajauzi?" He says, "I just kept catching bream all night." And I said, "Yeah, but you were catching carp as well, weren't you?" He says, "Yeah, it was." He says, "But it's going crazy for the bream." So yeah, I mean, this is it. You can't win, can you? You can't win. So.
That's the holy grail, I guess, isn't it? Something that carp just can't swim past, but bream have to swim past. Ain't gonna happen, is it?
It's like the tiger nuts.
Yeah,
no, it's like the tiger nuts. The only time I've ever used tiger nuts, because I've used peanuts quite a bit, and I was on a water probably about 16 years ago. There's quite a lot of bream in there, and one of the lads said, "Oh, just get on the tigers. You won't catch any bream." And I caught bream every single time I used tiger nuts on there.
100%.
You know, so. Which is a bit strange, because you wouldn't think a bream was.
The thing is, they might not consume a large quantity of them, but they'll sure as shit pick them up.
I think it's the sugars, and it's very rich in sugars. Tiger nuts are very rich in sugars.
Have you ever used amylase with any kind of grain like that?
Well, the enzymes.
Yeah.
Have I ever gone down the enzyme route?
Carbase, yeah.
Yeah, no, never really been inclined to go down the enzyme route. To me, it's a bit of a red herring. I mean, what I always say to anybody now is, why use enzymes, or even spend the time messing around with enzymes when you can buy pre-digested fish meal, which just does exactly the same as what your enzymes is doing.
Well, amylase is obviously working.
Well, yeah, it's a sugar digesting enzyme. Amylase is, yeah, it's a sugar digesting enzyme. But all I'm saying is, what do you want to hydrolyze your sugar for? What do you want to do that for? What's the objective in that?
I'll tell you, I mean, do you feel that there is some chemical reaction from that hydrolysis happening in real time, for want of a better phrase?
Yeah, but all you're doing is liberating monosaccharides. I can do that by putting molasses in my bait. You know, that's always been my counter argument for anybody who wants to use enzymes. And I'll say, well, if anyone says to me I'm using amylase, I'll go, what for? You're just producing monosaccharides. I can do that by putting molasses in my bait for no cost.
I'm with you, dude.
Or no messing around.
What I'm trying to say is, yeah, I get it, and that's what Pete said to me before. But what I'm trying to get at is, do you feel that there's a certain chemistry happening from that carb splitting happening in real time? So do you think there's some kind of byproduct of that enzyme splitting down the carbohydrate
from the enzyme reaction?
Yeah. Do you feel it's just a case of the enzyme is entering in and then it's splitting down that saccharide, or do you feel do you feel as a byproduct of that happening, there's something else released that maybe we don't know what that is? And I know I'm being very ambiguous, but do you get what I'm driving at?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying, because I mean, I've heard Ken Townley talk before about he seemed to think that when he used enzymes in the early days that there was some sort of attraction to the carp to the enzymes. Scientifically speaking, I can't really see what the attraction would be to an enzyme to a carp. I can see what the attraction is to an amino acid or a sugar, something that can react with its chemoreceptors, but not an enzyme. An enzyme in size terms is enormous compared to an amino acid. You know, an enzyme is a collection of amino acids. It's a protein.
Does that matter?
Probably too big to be it's too big to be recognized. Carp's chemoreceptors don't recognize proteins.
Yeah, I get it. But if that enzyme is having an effect on the carbohydrate or protein, whatever type of enzyme it is that chemical reaction not letting off something else that we're unaware of, that isn't an amino acid, it's not a saccharide, it's not an enzyme, it's something else that we're not aware of? Do you get what I mean? In which, if that was the case, it doesn't matter how big the molecule is of the enzyme. It's the effect it's having.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but you're actually alluding there to that you think there's a byproduct that's going to be detectable by the fish, and there isn't. Yeah. Because if you you know, once you know the definition of an enzyme, it won't catalyze an impossible reaction. All it does is speeds up a reaction that occurs naturally anyway. So all you are doing with an enzyme is you're just increasing a reaction. It's like if you put a boilie into a lake with intact proteins in it, then eventually it'll liberate amino acids.
Exactly, yeah. What I'm trying to say is, I understand what you're saying, but that happening in real time, it has the same end result. I agree.
Yeah, that's happening in real time. The minute, you
know. Over a lot longer. You're basically speeding it up by having an enzyme, aren't you?
Yeah, of course you are. Yeah, you're speeding it up. Yeah.
Does that? Yeah. Could that not be advantageous? No.
Not something that I've really thought about a great deal, because I mean, if you could actually say to me you thought that the enzymatic reaction was liberating X, Y, or Z, then I might think, yeah, but it doesn't, because all it does is takes the substrate, reacts with the substrate, the enzyme comes out the other end unchanged, because that's what enzymes do. so it can go on, move on to the next molecule, and it just liberates the products, which is whatever, peptides, amino acids, monosaccharides, fatty acids, whatever, fatty acids and glycerol. Depends what it's working on. It depends on the substrate.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it does. I'm playing. Obviously, I'm playing devil's advocate here, and I guess I'm linking back to that whole thing of like, I think there is a lot that we don't know about the attraction of carp, and you know you've said that yourself. I guess I'm playing devil's advocate and saying maybe, to put it in layman's terms, there's some shit going on when those saccharides or whatever they might be are split down in real time as it's there happening. Is there something leaking off quick that is attractive to the carp? That's what I'm asking. I know science would say no, there isn't.
Well, no. I mean, who knows? I mean, it might cause some sort of localized ionization. That's a possibility, and that could attract fish. That's a good
point. That's a good point.
See,
maybe it's that.
That's a possibility. You know, but I've never played around with enzymes purely and simply because I've never felt the need to. So yeah, it's not the only other usage of an enzyme that I've ever seen in a bait, and I thought, yeah, that's a good usage of an enzyme, was the original Grange bait, the main line, when you'd got the CSL, the part 1 and 2. And I'm led to believe, on good authority, that the part 2 had an enzyme in called phytase. Now, if you don't know what phytase is, it's used in animal feedstuffs to increase the nutritional value of low food value products, such as soya products, because they've got things in called phytates, which sort of robs the amino acid, robs the protein content from the ingredient, and that was used in the Grange bait.
Minerals as well, right?
That's it. Minerals, because they're attached to minerals, So it releases the minerals, and it also frees up the proteins. And when I saw that and I knew about that, I thought, that's actually possibly one of the best uses of an enzyme that I've seen in a bait, because it's taking something that's relatively, well, not low nutrition, but can't be utilized properly, to something that can. But with the other baits where people are using enzyme systems, like your fish meals and all the rest of it, there's nothing wrong with the nutrition of those ingredients, and the carp's digestive enzymes will sort all the rest out. But the carp hasn't got the phytase enzyme, so that's why it was a good usage of an enzyme.
It's very interesting. Very interesting. Did you buy into the
right, guys? I'm gonna go and get another Guinness out of the fridge now. So do you just want to talk amongst yourselves for 2 minutes?
Go get one. Go get one. Go for a taste as well. I'll edit this out, obviously.
I'll catch you in a couple of minutes, guys. Okay.
Crack on, mate. Crack on. No worries. Pete, you there, mate?
Yeah, I'm here, buddy.
You're right.
Whew, yeah, I was gonna say. So I don't know. We might edit this out, might not. But this is what I've always thought was like a little hole in your like enzyme logic. Is that you'll use carbases, whereas I said you could use like monosaccharides before. You could just put something like molasses in there that's already got the monosaccharides.
I get it.
Whereas with like proteases, mate, you're sort of like, I'm not too interested in them because I can just buy a like hydrolyzed liquid that's sort of broken down to all of free-form amino acids anyway. Yeah, you talk about that sort of like the byproduct. You know what I mean? Like,
I get it. I don't know if something's been lost in the way I'm explaining. I get what you're saying. I'm not actually, specifically talking about proteases, but the amylase. I think that the process of that splitting, that hydrolysis happening, right, in real time, as in it's happening in the water. I don't know if that's creating some kind of chemical reaction, which is therefore that in itself, in its own right, is attractive to the carp. I think it's too easy. I think it's too
amylase?
Well, I was just going to finish. I think it's too easy to say, okay, enzymes, they split down, saccharides or proteases or whatever that medium is working on. I think it's too easy to say that and look at it black and white. What happens as a result of that? If you look at chemistry, any reaction usually has a sub-reaction. So what is the sub-reaction of that enzyme splitting? And is that the thing that's attractive? And look, I'm not here shouting saying it is. I'm here shouting and raising the question of, is it? Do you see what I mean?
The thing is, mate, with you with amylase, is you've done the testing, haven't you? You're feeding
confident.
fish, and you've seen the results in itself. So
Yeah.
I guess that speaks for itself. Have you sort of tested alongside something like, so instead of treating something with amylase, have you sort of tested it alongside something like a molasses, or adding sort of like fructose or something, which is a monosaccharide?
This is the thing. To be totally honest with you, I'm very confident that there is a lot of mileage in amylase, but I'm not going to lie, I can't sit here and say I've tested it to the nth degree, so there's no doubt in my mind. I'm definitely not at that stage. I think there's possibly mileage in it. I'm kind of playing devil's advocate. So yeah, no.
So now it becomes clear why you kept pushing the points about amylase then, Sam, because you've been doing a little bit of work with the old amylase.
Oh yeah, mate, and I'll say that on the podcast. Yeah, I have been, mate, and I like, honestly, I get a good reaction from it. I was just saying to Pete, I don't know if you heard it or not. I'm not here trying to shout.
I can hear you.
Yeah, I'm not here trying to shout that like there is something in it and it does work. I'm just trying to shout that maybe there's a possibility it is, if that makes sense. I definitely don't know the answer on it, and I'll leave this bit in the podcast. I won't edit this out, or I'll edit it in rather. But I definitely don't know for a fact it will work. But I'm starting to think there is something in it.
The very interesting thing about amylase, when people talk about, people talk about what carp can digest and all the rest of it. Amylase is the enzyme that's produced at the highest level in the carp.
Very abundant.
Carp has got 4 times, I think it's 4 times as much amylase as it has any protease or any lipase.
Exactly.
So I've actually, again, I won't mention any names, but I've actually been in correspondence with people who are supposed bait gurus, and they don't even know that amylase is the enzyme that's produced the most in the carp's body. Now, when you actually consider that, and amylase is the carbohydrate digesting enzyme, it makes perfect sense that one of the best baits to use in the cold weather, when the enzyme activity of a carp slows down, to use is a carbohydrate-rich bait, because there's more amylase knocking around. Mm-hmm. So the carbohydrates get digested more efficiently in the winter than the proteins and the fats.
This is the thing, like the fact that it is the most abundant enzyme within the gut tract, right? Surely that should shout as to what is maybe most important for the carp to consume as far as macronutrients goes, right?
Well, no, I think what it actually is, if you think back to how things are designed in nature, or if you're religious, or how God's designed them, whatever you want to think, is it's always a reflection of the abundance of the natural food types. So if you look at what a carp's going to be coming across in its natural environment, there's going to be a lot of carbohydrates there. Yeah, there's going to be proteins there, but in amongst those so-called protein sources, there's going to be lots of carbohydrates there as well. So if they can't digest the carbohydrates, they're not utilizing the food properly. So that's why they've got this amylase enzyme there at high levels.
Mm. So is it that the proteins are generally very easy for them to digest? The carbohydrates aren't, which are inherently there. It's not necessarily seeking them out. It's just that they have a harder time with that. Therefore, they upregulate the amylase. Is that what you mean?
No, I don't think that's what it is. Because carbohydrates are relatively easy to digest, really. You only need one enzyme system to digest a carbohydrate, and that's it. Whereas with the protein source, people think that a carp digests. Anybody who's got a decent understanding of a carp's digestive system thinks that a carp just uses trypsin and chymotrypsin to digest proteins, and that's not true.
Yeah.
The trypsin and the chymotrypsin do the major chopping up, but then they've got a whole host of other smaller enzyme systems at the gut interface that chops all the peptides up into smaller fragments and smaller fragments and free amino acids. Without that, they're never going to utilize any protein source. Whereas with the amylase will do the job. And amylase will cleave carbohydrate source into monosaccharides, which can be absorbed into the bloodstream. So that's all you need. It's a simple enzyme system.
But from a bait perspective, sort of like jumping on Sam's bandwagon with amylase, if a carp can detect it, then surely, especially sort of like you're talking in winter time, that would be sort of like a carp could, if they can detect amylase, that would be sort of suggestive that it's doing the job for them. Like we're talking about digestibility. If it's something doing the job for them, then that would become more attractive as such. Very quiet.
But there's no evidence that carp can detect any enzymes. So I don't know why they would need to detect an enzyme.
Okay.
They produce enzymes in their own body. They don't need to ingest enzymes. If they did, they'd be in major trouble. The only carp that need to ingest any enzymes is baby carp, small carp, because the digestive system is very poorly developed. That's why they need live food sources, because they've already got enzymes in there. I mean, all foods have got enzymes in anyway. Natural foods that the carp eat have got enzymes in. But I don't think that the carp are not attracted to the enzymes. Well, there's certainly no evidence that I know about that carp are attracted to any enzyme or they've got any receptor to detect. I mean, as I say, an enzyme is quite a big molecule compared to an amino acid. Well, it's enormous, you know. An amino acid is one molecule, and an enzyme is a protein, which is quite big. I don't know of any carp that can detect any intact protein sources, you know. It all goes down to the amino acid attraction. It's only the components that they can detect.
It makes sense. It does. It makes sense. So sort of like talking about digestibility then, and especially in winter, and I know you've been talking about this bait that you constructed where the fish are addicted to wheat. I'm sort of like, I'm going into wheat germ and digestibility and sort of like gut transit times. Now, something I've done in recent years is I've moved away from wheat germ, and I've moved I've been using like micronized hemp. For gut transit time. I don't know. I don't know if you've got any thoughts or any comments, or just talking about digestibility, especially in winter.
Yeah, the wheat germ. I think what's happened with the wheat germ is it's like lots of things, isn't it? Somebody uses them, and then it gets a bit of a following for being the supreme additive in the winter and all the rest of it. I mean, I know it's big with the koi guys as well, the wheat germ. But if you actually look at wheat germ, there's only one reason why it's a good additive for the winter, and that's because it's got massive amounts of fibre in it, and that's all you need. So you're doing exactly the same job with your hemp. I mean, I've used loads of micronized hemp expeller, which is basically the cake what's left after they've extracted the oil. It's massively high in fibre, so it'll increase gut transit and digestibility. And it's also quite nutritious in the protein stakes. So yeah, I mean, it's just the fibre content. That's all you need. You just need, and the wheat germ is good because it's full of fibre. So yeah, it's definitely, digestibility is a massive thing with baits. That's another reason why I'm not a massive advocate of very hard baits either.
Yeah, for sure, and presumably why you go for milks a lot as well, or why you're an advocate for milks.
Yeah, well, I mean, the milks, as you might know, all of the milks, all of the casein milks, although they're very complicated proteins, they're solubilized in the carp's gut because of the pH of the gut. The carp's got an alkaline gut, and all the milk proteins are solubilized in the gut. So a milk protein is the perfect protein to use in the cold weather, because it gets solubilized in the carp's gut, so that increases the digestibility straight away. Yeah.
So would you always sort of like look for a milk protein going into cold weather over a fish meal then?
Not necessarily, no. If you want to use a very digestible protein source in the winter, then yeah, the milks are good. But your fish meals will still get digested in the winter. I mean, as I say, not every bait's the same. So some fish meals are not the same as others. A massive factor in a fish meal's digestibility is the quality of the fish meal. You know, like your Pravimis and stuff, your flame dried fish meals, they're nowhere near as digestible as your low temperature fish meals. I mean, everybody talks about RT94, the same again. It's just been touted around as the best fish meal and all the rest of it, but I don't use it anymore. I've used it quite a lot. I stopped using it in 2014, and I use the only UK produced low temperature fish meal now, and it's a superb fish meal. It's just as good as RT94. It's produced in exactly the same way. You know, I mean, fish meal production is another thing that we could talk about, just to give people an idea of what they should be looking for if they're asking somebody what fish meal they're using. You know, it's all about the production process with fish meal. That's what makes the difference in a fish meal.
I think something like Soprapesh, you can get away with that in the winter.
Yeah.
The highest inclusion rates you can
yeah.
get away with rolling, right? There's no real limit to it other than what's going to work within your mix from a physical boilie standpoint, if you follow me.
Yeah, the only problem you'll get with your pre-digested fish meal is your bait will break apart
exactly
a lot faster, and it'll be too sticky when you're rolling it.
Yeah.
But I don't use massive levels of pre-digested fish meal. I don't think you need to. In fact, from a nutritional point of view, it's even proven that an intact fish meal is far more nutritional than a hydrolyzed fish meal. It's an attractor. I've always said it's that pre-digested fish meal is not then there for the nutrition; it's in there for the attraction. Some people will say otherwise, but I mean, I can point them in the right direction to information that will convince them otherwise. But I don't use it as anything to do with nutrition. It's all there for attraction.
But but isn't the case that if you mix something like a pre-digested fish meal with a good quality fish meal, that's the sweet spot, right? So you've got both.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, you bang on. That's the pinnacle of fish meal creation. Yeah. The best fish meal baits, you know. Well, I say the best. That's debatable, but you know, they're very good. If you've got a bit of pre-dig in there and a good fish meal, that's about as good as it gets for your fish meal inclusion.
Yeah. So on that, sorry, Pete, you take the reins again in a minute, but on that theme then. So yeah, the classic pre-digested, you know, good low temperature, a well-rounded, well put together fish meal. You've seen to the vitamins, etc. Do you think a non-fish meal bait can touch that, can come close to it, or can exceed it? Obviously, I'm talking about cereals and milk proteins, brewer's yeast, etc.
I think, I mean, you've got to let the fish tell you, haven't you? The way I always look at bait is you've got to let the fish tell you. The fish will tell you everything you ever need to know about any bait you ever use. The problem with bait is a lot of people don't stick with it for long enough. You know, if you get a guy who's a home roller on his own, like I started, and like everybody else says he was interested in bait. If you don't get that instantaneous result, or it doesn't come quick enough, you can ditch your bait, and you can think, yeah, it's no good, it's not doing the job. And I think the thing with fish meals is, as I said before, fish meals probably when we had that question earlier about ingredients, what's the essential ingredients to include in a bait, I would probably say that fish meal is the best ingredient ever discovered. It's super attractive, it's nutritional, and I don't think I've ever made a fish meal bait ever and it's not been a good catcher. You know, you can put fish meal in anything and it'll just catch fish. Yeah. But as I say, I don't think it's down to the nutrition. I think it's down to the attraction. But there's definitely, I've definitely had personally and customers good results on fish meals. As I say, that bird food bait that I made, the wheat one, where I was talking about the wheat thing, that was the best. That was possibly the best bait on that water. Although the fish meal baits were catching very well, and they caught loads of fish from there, they weren't catching that big one. Although that big one did eventually get caught on a couple of fish meal baits that I make, but not to the same level. It was, I mean, people probably think, you know, you're trying to play it up a bit, but I assure you I'm not. And I've gone on other waters where milk protein based baits have outfished fish meals, even in the summer and the spring. Not in the winter.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, a good fish meal bait, Sam, as you'll know because you've made bait. I mean, both of you've made bait. A good fish meal bait does take some beating, but they're not 100%. The only things that can.
Yeah,
they're not the only baits that can have supremely effective results.
Do you know what? One of the best baits I sort of had results with anyway was using like a poultry meal as the main base of a protein source. And I've never got to the bottom of why. I think it's mainly maybe because of the attractor package, or I was using a lot of yeast. I was using fenugreek in there, amongst a few other things. But the poultry meal is something I never went back to, but it was always one of the baits I've got sort of fond memories of anyway, and it always did really well. But like I was saying, I don't know if that's a poultry meal thing or if it's because of the attractor package. I really don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like the mainline Grange, the original Grange. I don't think there was any fish meal in there. And I mean, I never used it because I always made my own bait, and very rarely have I ever bought any bait off anybody, even back in the early days. But that was a brilliant bait, and there was no fish meal in it.
Yeah. So, do you feel
Tutti Fruttis, the original Tuttis? No fish meal in that bait.
What do you think about that? Do you feel that the base mix had a lot to play with that, or do you think it was just the flavour?
I think it was a bit of everything, because I know. Same with that. I've virtually got it on good authority that I know everything that was in that bait, and it was a nutritional bait. I mean, people used to probably wrongly think it was an attractor bait because it was orange and it was brightly coloured, flavoured, sweet, all the rest of it. But it was actually a very good bait nutritionally. It had a vitamin supplement in there, and yeah, I think the flavour was very good flavour. I think the sugar in it played a big part as well. Well,
what sugar was
bait,
What sugar?
They used to put icing sugar in that bait.
I heard that before.
Yeah. But that was another one of Bob's. That was Bob Campbell. Bob Campbell came up with the original rich with tutti frutti flavour.
Yeah.
That was one of Bob's. Yeah.
Do you feel you could recreate that bait? The flavour's no more. The flavour's no more, obviously.
Well, no, I mean, you could get a very close flavour. But no, there's the protein source, and it was protein. You can't get that anymore. It's discontinued. That was why they stopped doing. That bait changed when the protein got discontinued, and that was like fairly high protein, single cell protein source, and I think it just got discontinued through problems about carcinogens or something because it was an animal feed. But so you couldn't create it exactly the same, but you could get quite close to it. You could probably get quite close to it with some of the. I mean, you can get different soya products now. I mean, I'm not talking about the isolates and stuff, but I use one. It's a Danish pig feed. I've started playing about with it in a couple of baits, and that's quite high in protein for a soya source. So yeah, but it was a good bait, wasn't it, the Tutti? I mean, nobody can argue with that bait course.
I've got a real soft spot for it. I wish I could get some. The Esterberry as well. You ever have that?
Yeah. No, I got friends who use that, and caught fish on it. Yeah.
Loved that stuff. Yeah, loved it. I used the flavour as well in my own baits. I love Esterberry. Yeah, it's a nostalgic thing, I think, with these things, isn't it? I mean, in this day and age, the fucking abundance of ingredients we've got, a lot of people, most bait enthusiasts can knock together a pretty fucking good bait, can't they, to be honest? But I think sometimes you can't knock the nostalgia, It just takes you back to a certain time, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Like things get reputations and it snowballs and all the rest of it, and then you've got all the nostalgia linked into it, and before you know it, you've got a legendary bait, haven't you? So, and I think that's what happened with the Tutti, But as you say, I mean, it's pretty difficult to make a bait that some carp won't eat, but some baits are much better than others. I mean, you've made baits, so you'll know that some baits are much better than others.
Oh, God, yeah.
And anyone who's interested in bait will say the same. Some baits are much better than others. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeasts, something that we've mentioned a few times. Is yeast something that you have paid much attention to? Obviously, depending on the one, potentially rich in nucleotides, B vitamins, proteins, vitamins.
Yeah, choline. Don't forget the choline.
Choline as well. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, they love that. Yeah, I mean, yeast's a brilliant ingredient. I don't use it in every bait, but it's. I mean, the big one at the moment, the buzzword in yeast is the Brocacell. And I think it's becoming apparent now that a lot of people know that it was in the famous coconut bait. But I mean, from all the research that I've done, because I'll never use anything just because it's become popular. I'll think, well, what can I get from that I'm not already getting? And your bog standard brewer's yeast does virtually the same thing. All the yeasts have a massive effect on the carp's digestive system, make it work more efficiently. So I've never changed over from the brewer's yeast to the Brocacell. I mean, I can get the Brocacell, but it's just far more expensive. And as far as I can see on the research that I've done, it's not doing anything else other than what the brewer's yeast will do that I've been using for years. So, yeah.
What about the...
Well, yeah, I mean, yeast is a superb ingredient.
High nucleotide yeast?
Yeah, I've never used that purely and simply because it's more expensive, and I'm happy with what the normal yeast. I mean, what you've got to remember is any brewer's yeast that you get anyway is already high in nucleotides anyway, by the very nature of the beast, because a nucleotide only comes from something that's alive and actively replicating, and that's what yeast's doing anyway when they're brewing beer. So a normal yeast's very high in nucleotides anyway. So yeah. But yeah, I'm pretty sure that these high nucleotide yeasts are going to be effective in bait. But how much more bang for your buck you're getting, I don't know. If the cost is twice as much and you're not getting a twofold increase in effectiveness, then is it worth the money? That's why I always ask myself, is it worth the money?
Yeah, I figure like more nucleotides can they be a bad thing? I don't think they can.
Oh no, definitely
can't get too
not.
much of that good thing, can you? Really?
No. But what I'm saying is, I mean, the people I can get high nucleotide yeast from, they want twice as much money for it as they want for brewer's yeast, which, as I say, is already high in nucleotides. So
yeah.
I mean, call me tight, but I'm not tight because I always use good quality ingredients in all my baits. But I'll never use anything unless I'm 100% convinced it's going to make a massive difference to the bait. And if I don't think it's going to make a massive difference, I don't use it. Yeah. I mean, people just think high nucleotide it's going to be massively different to the normal yeast. I mean, I don't know. I've not seen any tech specs on any high nucleotide yeast, but I'll pretty much edge my bets that there's not going to be much difference.
Yeah. You mentioned
unless that's what you're using, Sam. Are you using high nucleotide yeast?
No, I'm using Brocacell.
Are you using the Brocacell?
Yeah. Price wise, it sits.
What do you think of it then? If you've already used a normal good quality brewer's yeast, what do you think about the Brocacell in comparison to it?
The only thing I could comment on would be on paper. I haven't, tested extensively side by side. Yeah, I mean, the Brocacell makes slightly better sense to me. It is a little bit different on paper.
But it does the same thing though.
Yeah, no, you're right, mate. You're right. Yeah, I put it this way: if I couldn't use the Brocacell and I had to use the Brewers, would I be bothered that it would affect the mix, or do I think the carp would see that as a different mix than what I'd been feeding? No, absolutely not. No. I do agree with you. I think it's, and listen carefully, it's possibly slightly better. So I would rather use it. It's not that much difference in price, really. It's not megabucks different, not for the amount I'm rolling.
Tis where I'm buying it from.
But you're rolling tons, right? You're rolling tons or tons a month?
Yeah, I do a few. Yeah, I do a few tons. No, not. Well, it depends how busy. Depends how good a month you have. But yeah, I do a fair few tons a year. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, that's where I'm at with it. You mentioned the coconut bait, Salmonax.
Yeah, that's another one, isn't it? It's just is that I think that's a liquid yeast, is it, that's improves digestibility. But as I say, if you do your research on the brewer's yeast, I think the key components is something called inulin, and that's what increases. It's all about prebiotics and probiotics. I mean, it's a prebiotic yeast, so it doesn't matter if you use brewer's yeast or whether you use Brocacell. It's still a prebiotic. It still increases the Carp's gut bacteria, which maximizes the utilization of all its feedstuffs. So as soon, I know all the ins and outs in that, and I just looked at the Brocacell and thought, well, it's not doing anything that the brewer's yeast isn't doing, so I'll stick with what I'm using. And that's just how I look. That's how I work with everything with the bait. Nothing goes in there for the sake of it.
Yeah. You mentioned inulin though. If you're splitting it down like that, you can get inulin powder.
Yeah, you can. Yeah.
So why wouldn't
it's in semolina as well? It's in semolina. Semolina's got inulin in it, and that improves the digestive tract of the carp.
Yeah, I think semolina. I know it's obviously touted as like a bulk filler, but I think there's a lot more to it than people realise.
It's a good ingredient. It's very good ingredients.
Yeah.
Well, it's that good. I'll tell you a little story about Andy Little. Andy Little was fishing Savvy. I mean, this is like second-hand information I'm getting, but I know it's true. He was fishing Savvy. I think it was in the 80s. And he was using, like I say, back in the 80s, people are all on the milk proteins. He was using 100% casein bait. Now, as you know, 100% casein bait is pretty expensive. 100% casein. That's what he's using.
Wow.
He's using 100% casein bait.
That's not possible, surely.
Well, yeah, casein's pretty heavy. I dare say a little roll, yeah. I mean, this is the story I've had relayed to me.
Wow.
He's using a bait that was, if it wasn't 100% casein, it was very high in casein. So it was an expensive bait, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And all he's using is a maple flavour and a sweetener. And he was catching loads of fish. And obviously, he started hitting his pockets, and he thought, Jesus, this bait's a bit expensive. All this casein I'm chucking in. So what did he do? He just switched over to 100% semolina bait, and that was it. Job done. Catches didn't go down or anything. He just still caught the same amount of fish. I mean, he's a good angler, but he still caught the same amount of fish on that bait. So he's gone from the higher echelons, if you like, of the bait ingredient world down to the slums with the semolina, and he's still catching loads of carp. But as I say, bait's important, but it's not the only factor. But that just shows you that he was still getting very good results. So obviously, in that bait, the flavour and the sweetener was playing a massive part in it as well, and a good angler on the end of the rod.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? I mean, I'm guessing that is a bait with a flavour, right?
Yeah. He was using a maple flavour. Yeah. Which is a very good flavour.
Exactly. Yeah. Which is probably, I mean, that's got a lot more to it than just, it's not just
well,
setting base.
We've already been talking.
Exactly.
Yeah, we've already been talking about the spices, and the maple 9 times out of 10 is based on the spice, and it's, the fenugreek. So, yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Do you have like do you have a particular favourite for maple flavour these days? I know there's been a hell of a lot on the market.
Do you know I've never used a maple flavour?
Really?
Yeah, never. Never used a maple flavour, ever.
Interesting. Do you, a flavour something that you have in all of your mixes, or do you just serve a purpose in some of them?
No, my the bait that I sell the most of has got no liquid flavour in it at all.
No liquid flavour?
No, none.
It
hasn't got a flavour in it, no.
Powder?
No, not powdered. Nothing. Okay. No synthetic flavour in that bait whatsoever. I only sell I sell 2 baits that have got synthetic flavours in. That's it.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, me and Pete, didn't we, Pete? We went for a long phase of not using any flavour.
Yeah.
Yeah, I go around in circles of it. For a period, I'm all sold on flavours, and I'm like, no, there is a lot to it. Certain flavours, they definitely
Yeah, there
contain
is.
different organic compounds and things like. And
No,
then
there
the rest
is.
of the times,
There
I'm
is.
like, do you know what? You can bypass it. It's not necessary. Blah 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 blah. I come to
Yeah.
the conclusion that
Yeah.
do you know what? It sounds stupid, but I enjoy using a flavour. Just because I enjoy.
No,
that.
I mean,
It's like a fun thing.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah,
It's weird,
yeah.
but
The thing is, though, as well. I mean, it goes back to the old anthropocentric thing, doesn't it? I mean, people smell bait and they make their mind up that that's the one because they can smell the flavour. But they're not a carp, are they? They're not living underwater.
yeah, exactly.
But you know, I went through a phase when I made this particular bait that I still sell now, and I sell more of it than any other bait. It's got no synthetic flavour in it whatsoever. I was 100% convinced that you did not need a flavour in a bait because that bait was that good. But I had to eat my words because you do need a flavour in some baits. Well, at least an essential oil, because you can't. I think personally, you can get away with a bait with no flavour, mainly if it's a fish meal based bait and it's got the right ingredient. If it's got the right ingredients in it. I mean, I've had great results on a milk based bait with no flavour in, but it's the same again. If you give it to the guys who are putting 1 in and 10 round the hook bait, it's nowhere near as effective as it is if it's got an essential oil in it or a flavour.
Yeah.
You know, but if you put it in quantity, and then you're relying on the ingredients as well because you're getting a massively higher leak off from all the free offerings, then that bait works extremely well. But obviously, you know, just common sense just says that 10 baits ain't going to attract like 250 baits. So.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, and especially with the fish meal thing. For those non-fish meal baits that you do have to have a flavour in there just to round everything off, or just to make it work fully. Do you think it's a case of flavour or essential oil, or do you think better to add them both? Where do you stand with that?
I personally don't think you need anything with an essential oil, although I do sell one bait with a flavour and an essential oil. But I don't really do it because I think that the flavour on its own wouldn't work well enough. I do it for the simple fact that the specific gravity is different between the flavour and the essential oil, so I'm doing two different things on the attraction level.
Right. Okay. So different leak off rates and different leak off styles. Would you?
Yeah.
Say
that's
that?
it. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's it. You've hit the nail on the head. Yeah. That's why I do it. That's why I do it.
Do you ever bolster that up with like singular amino acids?
No, I've never gone down that route because that route is pretty susceptible to the denaturing in the cooking process. You know, those are the amino acids that are going to go first. The singles. You know, if you're adding any amino acid powders to a bait, then they're the ones you're going to lose first in the cooking process.
Unless you're just not using egg and you're drying.
Yeah. Or if you're just applying, as I heard Pete talking about when I grabbed a beer from the fridge, if you're just applying the liquids, the hydrolyzed liquids or whatever you want to use to your bait after it's been cooked, I mean, that's a superb method of increasing the attraction of your bait.
Yeah, for sure. Were you going to say something then, Pete? Sorry, I think I cut you off.
No, no, I don't think so. No. I'm getting sort of lost in all. There's lots I want to say. This is going on a complete tangent now. Well, I've got the mic here. Have you ever looked into calcium chloride? And is that anything you've used in your baits, or is it something you've tested with before, Dean? Is that
calcium chloride? Well, it's I've never used calcium chloride, but I'll tell you a little story about calcium. Anything with calcium in is attractive to carp. Anything, and if you actually think about it for a moment, and think about natural food, then that'll give you the answer. I'm just going to grab another Guinness because it's flowing down now, but I'll come back to you in a second about this calcium thing.
Tell you what, this fucking Cointreau has kicked in.
Mate, yeah, I know.
How'd you know?
Well, no, but I know because I've drunk my San Miguel's and I've had some St. Etienne's left over from my.
Ooh.
I went on a social with my mate on the weekend.
Yeah, he said.
Whew, mate, I've had a few. Mate, I'm enjoying the pod. It's good listening. Like,
yeah,
it's interesting. It's really got my fire burning. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's
been nice to have me on, guys. You know,
Dean. Yeah, I mean, like if I was listening to this would be right up my street. This would be the best podcast ever. I mean, there'll be a lot of people that just won't like it and they won't want to. That's why I did that little disclaimer in the beginning. We don't care about those people. Like it's better to note it down, and no, it's true. In this instance,
we don't care about you.
well, you know what I mean. This isn't that podcast for those people that want the general stuff.
No, I mean,
listen to something else.
The thing is, the bait market's changing. I mean, fishing's changed massively. People don't look into bait anymore, do they? A lot of people just don't look into bait. They'll buy on fashion. They'll follow trends. What X, Y, or Z using. A lot of people are not really bothered what's in the bait anymore. But you've still got people who are bothered about the bait, and that's the kind of people I want to sell bait to. People who are bothered about what's in the bait.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's your passion, isn't it? And it's your living. You know.
Yeah. Sorry, the wife's just trying to talk to me now.
That's all right. Get her on the podcast.
No, she's all right. She's getting bed in a minute, so I'll probably cut it short in about 20 minutes, guys, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
You're going to tell us about calcium, mate.
Oh, yeah. Well, have you had a little think about it? About why you think carp might like calcium?
So my reasoning is, mate, I've read sort of studies. You've got koi papers, etc. I've read bits on calcium chloride, and it's something I've used not necessarily so much in my boilies. I've never noticed a difference. I've put it in boilies before. I've never noticed a big difference, to be honest.
Yeah.
But using it with particle is something I've noticed a difference with, rather than sort of salting your particles. I've used using calcium chloride instead. And yeah, I was just literally wondering if you've used it and your theories on it. It's something I keep going back to. Do you know what I mean? It's something I just sort of always venture back to.
So you found it made a difference then in your particles?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if you think about carp's natural food, yeah, you've got snails, yeah. What's a snail got?
Yeah, a shell.
A snail's got a shell. Yeah. What's the shell made of?
Calcium.
Calcium. Yeah, there you go. You got swan mussels. It's got a shell. The shell's made of calcium. You got shrimps. Shrimps have got a sort of exoskeleton. It's made of calcium. So yeah, I mean, it's proven that calcium is a massive taste thing in carp. They like things with calcium in. So yeah, I mean, I use calcium caseinate in the bait, in some of the bait. It's a brilliant ingredient. But fish meal's got bone in. It's full of calcium. So yeah, I mean, calcium is an attractor to fish. Carp like calcium.
So my theory is as well, because I live down in Cornwall, and we've got incredibly soft water down here. There's no calcium in the water, like pretty much whatsoever. Real soft water. You take like TDS readings of the lake, that sort of thing. There's very little sort of dissolved solids in there, very little calcium. So that's something I really found a difference in my particles anyway, like maize and things, peanuts when I soak them. Calcium chloride is a bit of a winner, I find, for me.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, I've never thought of doing that, but that's. I mean, I don't use particles a great deal anyway because I sell boilies, but I do use particles when I think I need them. But yeah, I'll probably try that, to be honest with you, Pete. Yeah, I think I will.
Yeah, cool.
That raises some questions in me because my milks at the minute, I'm pretty much just acid and rennet, and then WPC 80, and a little bit of hydrolyzed whey as well, as we spoke about earlier. So those, I feel like I've got everything covered by those ingredients, as far as milks go, of course.
Mm.
Do you think I'm wrong? Do you feel like I would be better off changing that mix, or getting a different milk in there, or taking one of those milks out? What do you reckon, Dean?
Well, I mean, if you've got the hydrolyzed milk in there, you've got a soluble milk source, because don't forget your rennet and your acid are not soluble.
Yeah.
The only reason I use the calcium caseinate is because it's a solubilized casein, so it's a soluble ingredient, and your whey is soluble as well, but as you know, it gels up, so you're going to lose a lot of that solubility in the cooking process. But no, I mean, you'll definitely be on point there with those milks, but as I say, there is this calcium issue. It's proven that calcium's a gustatory thing in carp. It stimulates the taste system, and they're attracted to it. And when you think about it, it makes perfect sense from the natural food perspective. But the only thing I would say to anyone who's using milk proteins, particularly casein, is if you want to get the real maximum out of them, for various reasons. I mean, nowadays, because they're expensive, I don't think lots of carp bait companies are using loads of casein and baits. I might be wrong, but I don't think they are. And I would say if anyone's using 10% plus of casein and say a balanced fish meal formula, then they'll probably be using as much as the people who are using the most, if you get what I'm saying. Now, because of this opioid peptide issue with the caseins, I personally think that if you're trying to achieve that, you need at least 10% casein in your bait. I'm not saying it's a waste of time if you're only using...
What type of casein?
Anything. Rennet, acid, calcium caseinate, it doesn't really matter, because they've all got casein in, so they all do the same thing. But if you want to maximize this opioid peptide thing, the more casein you can get in there, the better. And I personally think that the cutoff point is about 10%. But that said, if you're just using 5% total caseins in your bait, I mean, you're probably using more than that anyway.
I'm not. I haven't got fish meals. I haven't got fish meals, so I've got way more milks in than.
Yeah, you got loads in there. You got loads in there. So you should be getting. You really are with that bait getting right up there with the. I mean, I don't know. I mean, have you had any repeat captures on the bait? Or have you noticed any fish going absolutely crazy for you when you're feeding them? You know?
No, mate. I'm in super early stages. I'm currently fishing with peanut. Probably shouldn't say that because some lads on my water now listening to this podcast. But no, I'm just fishing with peanut right now. I'm still putting this mix together. This is very early days for me. Of course, I'm like bringing things together that I used to roll up years ago. But I haven't rolled bait for a while. I've rolled hook baits and I've done some different things with that. So no, it's a new mix for me, mate. But no fish meals. My way of thinking is like there's a shit ton of really good fish meals going in. Like I might be wrong on this. Please tell me if you disagree with me. I really value your opinion. So I'm like, okay, I want to go away from that. I want a bait that's basically comprised of some cereals, yeast, and a lot of milks. With my own attractor package. That's the way I kind of. That's just where my gut takes me.
No, 20 minutes.
Okay.
It's all right. It's the wife.
All right. No, that's all right. I mean, what would you do? Tell me what you'd do.
I mean, with the milks, the casein and your hydrolyzed stuff, I probably wouldn't go any higher than about. I mean, it depends on your ratio, your egg ratio, and all the rest of it, because not every bait's the same. So your total milk protein content in your finished product might be slightly different. But I personally wouldn't probably go over 35-40% with the milks in total in your bait. One for cost and two for you're not going to get any more out of it anyway. So that'd be my thing. What I'd say to you. So if you're using any more than 40% total milks, then I'd drop it down.
I'm actually not. Would a portion of that be like more of a bulk milk, like lamb lac or something?
No, I don't include them. When I'm talking about I'm talking about milks, I'm just referring to the expensive refined milk proteins. I don't put any of the calf milk powders under the same banner.
So 30% you think is the sweet spot, maybe?
Yeah, roundabout. It depends how much casein you're using, really.
Well, go on then, enlighten me. How much should I be using?
Well, bare minimum 10%. Bare minimum, if you want to get the effect of the opioid peptides. Bare minimum 10%.
Yeah.
The more the merrier, really.
I'm getting that.
The more the merrier, but don't go over 40.
I'm getting that from the acid and the rennet. Do you feel that I benefit from adding the calcium in there as well? Calcium caseinate?
Possibly, yeah.
Purely just for calcium?
Yeah, because it's... and the fact that it's solubilized form of casein, so it's leaking off the bait.
Yeah.
Whereas the other casein, the acid and the rennet, they ain't going in the water. They're insoluble, so that's what's happening with them.
It kind of sounds to me like, all three would be sort of work really well with one another, which I think you already know, Sam.
Well, I think
do you want
the acid and the rennet, yeah, for sure.
Definitely.
The calcium, I wasn't, to be honest, I've been happy to leave out the calcium caseinate.
Mm-hmm.
It says a tricky ingredient when you're using it because it's quite sticky and it's very light. It's very light, so
I feel I get. Here's where I'm at. I feel the mix would have to change somewhat to accommodate that, and I'm questioning what it would bring to the party, if you know what I mean. Yes, soluble caseinate. I get that.
Yeah, but you've already got a solubilized milk form with your hydrolyzed whey, but whey's a bit of a different animal than casein. So
yeah, I understand.
You're not getting the same thing from the whey, really.
It sounds to me like you're referring to the opioids, and is it a soluble sort of form of the opioids, or?
Well, yeah, it's just more for the attraction, yeah. I think calcium caseinate is a very attractive ingredient to carp, particularly when it's cold.
Put it this way, Dean. What's say if you had just the only real solid protein source in your mix was coming from milks, you got a bit of brewers and stuff, and some cereals in there. What breakdown, what split would you have of milk proteins? Which ones would you have, and in what levels? As a rough idea, obviously not specific.
If I was going to avoid the hydrolyzed whey, which I've never used it.
Yeah, avoid that. Yeah, avoid it.
Not because I don't think it'll be effective. More from a commercial angle. It's a lot more expensive. So and the milk's already expensive. I'd be looking at bare minimum of 15% total caseins, so that make that up however you want to. I'm not an advocate of this mixing acid and rennet. Either go for one or the other.
Really?
Depends how you want your bait, actually. Depends how you want your bait, because the rennet makes a bit of a softer bait, whereas the acid makes a bit of an harder bait, and that's about it. Because the amino acid profile of them is not massively different. It depends on the manufacturer, but they're not a great deal different. So I'd have 15% total caseins minimum if you were looking to maximise the effect of the caseins, and then maybe 5 to 7% whey protein, and that'll do you. Job done. Because what you got to bear in mind is the milks anyway. If you go too high, the carp can't utilise them properly because they're a bit too much for the digestive system. Whereas the fish meals, they can get through them no problem. And don't forget, a good fish meal is 70% protein, and milk protein is 90% protein. So you're still getting virtually the same amino acid profile. Well, you're not getting the same because they're a different animal, but you're getting the same protein content.
So 15% casein. I mean, that's similar to what I had, although you're saying, you know, just pick either acid or rennet. What percentage of
I would.
the casein, what percentage of that 15% would you make the calcium?
It depends on the rest of the mix.
What would you like to have in there? 10?
Bare minimum 5%. Bare minimum 5%.
10, best case scenario? If you
5.
get away with
5.
It?
Well, yeah,
5.
I mean, yeah, but when you start getting to 10, depending on the rest of the mix, you might be making a light bait that's getting quite difficult to roll. It's pretty sticky, calcium caseinate is. Yeah. Pretty sticky. The highest I've ever used calcium caseinate at is 11%, and it's pretty sticky. It's 11%.
That's pretty high.
Pretty sticky.
Yeah. I've never done that. Never done that. Obviously, look, I'm not rolling like you are. You're a professional. I'm not. But yeah, 11% is high for calcium caseinate. Very high. Did the bait work well?
Yeah, it's a good bait. Yeah, good bait. I still use it, and it's in the same form. It was basically when it was the early days of a bait that I'm selling now. Playing around with the milk levels. Yeah, it caught well. It's 11%. Yeah, I use it at 7.5% now, so not quite as high because it was a bit too sticky on the tables. So yeah.
Is there a good supplier of that these days?
Yeah, I buy all my milk proteins off Baccarel. I always have done.
Yeah, they're very good, aren't they?
Yeah.
They are very good. Yeah. Cool. Good
anyway,
stuff.
We thought this would last a while, and it's lasted quite a while, hasn't it?
It's lasted a long time, and there's I feel like there's a hell of a lot to go into, but I feel we're just going to get down too many different rabbit holes. Really appreciate you coming on, Dean, and I appreciate the fact that we've just been hammering questions at you for the last like 2.5 hours.
It's been good. I've enjoyed it mostly.
Yeah, it's time flies, doesn't it, when you're doing these things? Yeah. Thank you ever so much for coming on. Like, it's been very enlightening.
Thanks for having me on. I'll come back on if people like it. I'll come back on. I'll do another chat about loads of different things. But
we'll just touch the surface, really. We'll see how it goes. As I said, I think this will be a real niche thing. Like, for us, we get messages most days, and it's all about bait and in the ins and outs of bait. So we're definitely sort of getting a reputation as a bait podcast, although we didn't set out to do that. It just tends to be what we do. So if people are loving this, and I'm sure they will, I mean, we would love to have you on for a part 2 if you're up for that. Yeah. I'm sure it'll go down well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm just known as being a bait maker, but I'm an angler as well. So, what I like to do really, what I think is better for the podcast is tie the bait stuff in with actual things what have occurred on the bank, because that's I always say the fish tell you everything. The fish tell you everything you need to know about bait. So that's the end result that everyone's after, isn't it? The fish on the bank.
Yeah, I think it's time, Dean. Like, just give yourself a definite plug, because we've not really mentioned your bait company or what you do or how long you've been running for. So I think now would be a good time. I think you agree, Sam, to give yourself a plug, Dean. Because I think people will really enjoy this. I think it's going to be popular, and I think now's the perfect time for you to sort of give your company a little plug and go for it.
Yeah, I mean, just a pretty small outfit. Scientific Bait's been going for 10 years now, based in Stoke. The bait's caught loads. It's caught carps over £50 in this country. It's caught carp over £70 in France. I've been making bait for as long as I've been carp fishing, because same as you guys, when I first started carp fishing, everybody made bait. It was as simple as that. And I've never gone away from that. I've always been interested in bait, and then after a few years of just making a bit for mates and everyone was catching, I just thought, well, try and make a job of it, and here we are. I'm still doing it 10 years later. I mean, I'm not massive, I sell quite a few tons of bait a year, but I'm not an enormous outfit, but I make a living from it. But it's good quality bait, but it's difficult breaking through in today's market because, it's quite difficult when you've got companies who are spending more on advertising than you're spending on ingredients in a year. So you're a bit up against it, but yeah.
And where can our listeners find you, Dean?
We're on Facebook and Instagram. I don't do the Instagram. One of the lads does the Instagram for me, but I'm on Facebook as well. So yeah, get on there and have a look at it. And I've got a bit of a special offer on at the moment as well. For another 12 days, you can get 10 kilo bait off me for 65 quid delivered to your door, which is not bad really for good bait. So yeah,
it's pretty good, mate. That is pretty good.
That probably sounds like it's like contrived and set up for the podcast. So I actually didn't know that. How do people get that deal? I was on your website earlier. You're usually Was it £7? Are you like £8 a kilo? Is that what you usually charge if you're buying 10k?
No. I charge 35 quid on a 5 kilo bag, apart from the bait that's got a fair chunk of milks, and I charge 37.50 for that. So that's 75 quid for 10 kilo. I mean, and that's a very good price for that bait. But in my local area, and with not having a massive reputation, you can outprice yourself. I've often thought about selling that bait for £8 a kilo because it's an expensive bait to make. But it's a superb catcher, but I just don't sell much of it anymore. But there is still lads that use it. It catches fish. But yeah. I'll probably give it to one out next time. That one's called HXB, Hot Cross Bun, that stands for. It's like a milk protein. It's like a bun spice. Cinnamon. Cinnamon, that one is.
Classic.
Bun spice, cinnamon. Yeah, it's a nice bait, that. Yeah. Nice
bait. Where do you live, Dean? Where are you based?
Stoke-on-Trent, we're based. Yeah.
Stoke.
Yeah. Right in the middle of the country.
Yeah, miles from me. I'd have had a bit off you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're a long way.
Yeah. Well, I can always post it, Sam. I can always post it.
Yeah, you can always post me some free bait if you want, Dean.
Oh, wow.
Nice of you to offer, mate. Nice of you to offer.
Yeah.
I'm fucking with you. I'm joking, mate.
Don't give much bait away, I don't, mate.
I bet you don't, mate. You Northerners, I know what you like.
Midlands. I'm in the Midlands, I am, mate, not the North.
Is Stoke Midlands?
Yeah, Midlands.
Anything above Birmingham is North to me, honestly.
Yeah, it probably is, yeah.
Proper Southerner.
But it's not really North, is it?
No,
it's not really North, is it?
Nah, not at all. Not at all.
Well, I am actually fishing in the North. I'm actually fishing in the North this year. I've got a ticket for a little syndicate in Cheshire, so that's the North.
Good man. What are you after? Have you got one fish you're after, or just a few of them?
I mean, it's a relatively new water. The fish have only been in there 4 years. It's a very old lake. There's a few nice fish in there. It's just nice fishing. It suits me. I had my first 20 out of there last week. But yeah, there's a few 30s, but it's a nice lake. It'll be a real good place in a few years because they're all growing. So yeah.
See, if we get you on again, I hope we do. That's a good topic. Old carp versus younger carp, and their want for bait.
Oh, I've got massive thoughts on that as well.
Yeah.
I mean that's another thing. Like when I said to you could cover this carp's amino acid requirement thing, because I think it differs.
Yeah, we didn't do that, did we?
Small carp and proper big uns, and also the milk proteins. I've got massive thoughts on the effectiveness of milk proteins with younger carp and old big uns and different things. So yeah. But yeah, I think I'll probably have to wrap up there because the wife's moaning because she wants to go to bed. And I'm making too much noise.
Dean, thank you so much. Honestly, it's been an absolute pleasure. It's been an eye-opener. I've learnt a hell of a lot. I'm sure our listeners have as well. Thank you so much. I hope you come on again. If you do, I think we've got shed loads to talk about. And just thank you ever so much. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been great. Yeah, thanks for having me on. Cheers, chaps.
You're welcome.
Nice
Take care, buddy.
Thanks a lot, buddy.
Yeah, bye. Bye, boys. Bye.
Cheers.
Boom. Done. You there still, Dean?
Yeah, he's gone.
Yeah, but I'm not on the mic.
That's all right.
Cool, mate. Yeah,
that was awesome.
Nice one, mate.
Thanks, Dean.
Thank you so much.
He's off with his missus, mate.
I think he's good episode, man.
If we
Mate,
listen,
I fucking loved it. Mate, I've had a lot of beer and I'm really into that episode. Like,